two groups want to present a bill to the legislature come January 12th, that they will be in a position to do that. I know, talking with the 5 members of this subcommittee, we'd rather not be here. We'd rather not be in a situation where we're having to draw this line, but we are, and we as Chairman Hamilton said in his prayer, we take this very seriously. We've all been getting the emails, and each one of us, some of you may know this, but I'll just reiterate it, each one of us is on the Governmental Affairs Committee in the House. We were all present during the debate over this issue that occurred during this past legislative session. So this is not unfamiliar to us. We're not just walking in cold off the street. This has been an issue that we have been dealing with and are aware of. So that being said, I hope that you all understand. You may not agree with my decision to have this meeting quickly or have it here at the Capitol, but there are resources here that we as legislators need to help us make this decision. This is being streamed over the internet so that folks who could not be here today can watch it, and also that this video will be archived so that folks who could not attend can watch it at their leisure. So those are some of the reasons why I decided to do this quickly and to do this here at the Capitol. And we look forward. We do take it. I've talked to a lot of folks. I've received lots and lots of emails, as I'm sure everybody on this committee has. And we do take this very seriously. And we look forward to hearing what the 2 proposed city groups have to say, and what you folks as members of the public have to say. I did ask the members of the committee, because we understand why folks want to form cities. So what I had asked both groups to do is to explain to us as members of this committee why their proposed map is better than the other guy's proposed map. And so that is what both groups have agreed to do, and that is what they will be focusing on. And as we hear from members of the public, I would ask that you keep that in mind too. My preference is to if folks want to vote on a city, I want to create a situation where they can do that. And so we want to push to remove the roadblocks and allow you citizens to decide what form of government you want to have governing you. Whether if you don't like a city or if you like a city, that's up to you. And we hope that this committee will help remove one of the major roadblocks that have allowed these 2 proposals to go forward, to allow you, the citizens of this area, to decide for yourselves how it is you want to be governed. So with that, I will ask the representatives of the La Vista Hills group to come forward and begin their presentation. We've given both sides, both official cityhood representatives, to 20 minutes. So you can sit at the table. There's no microphone on the table. All right. Well, I guess you better stand over there. Okay, that is witness mic 1. Check your mic and see if that's working there.
Is this mic working?
Can you? Okay. All right, sir, please identify yourself and begin your presentation.
Thank you, representatives. I'm Alan Bennett. I am co-chair of La Vista Hills Yes, and I am the leader, president of one of the 2 predecessor groups, the City of Briarcliff. And we're here. We are going to have a few of us speak, so I will go very quickly. You all know, of course, that in the 2014 session, there were 3 groups that were proposing cities in the area that we're talking about, and we agreed on almost everything. We all agreed that cities are a good idea and a good thing for the people who live in our area and a good thing for all of DeKalb County, but we disagreed on the borders. At the behest of the Governmental Affairs Committee, we mediated. As a result of that mediation, 2 of the 3 groups, so the good news is 2 of the 3 groups agreed to merge to form the City of La Vista Hills. The bad news is that we were unable to reach a compromise with our friends in Tucker about what the border should be, and obviously that's what brings us all here today. That failure is a failure that we all share. We all tried, we all failed, and I guess we all apologize for having to put this in your laps. As we drew the map for La Vista Hills that we are presenting to you today, and that we think is the best map for our side of this issue. We really were driven by three things. One is the no islands rule. The no islands rule, as pretty much everyone understands, that forced us honestly to leave out some areas where there are folks who support us that we would like to include, that would like to be part of us. Can't do it at this point because of the no islands rule. We'll see how that all develops as we go forward. One of the ideals that we tried to follow is that the commercial property should be divided sensibly, and one of us will speak to that. But we also want to emphasize, as critical as that ideal is, that the most important ideal, Representative Brockway, just as you said, is that the people should be able to choose. And so what we did as we worked around our borders, including the area that's in dispute now, with regard to the neighborhoods, not the commercial property, with regard to the neighborhoods, we all worked very hard in an effort to try to follow what the people in those neighborhoods were telling us, whether they wanted to be included or excluded. So to talk more about that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to my colleague, Liz Hanfeld.
Thank you, Alan. I also want to thank Alan and Amy Parker and Herman Lorenz from the City of Briarcliff Initiative. They have ventured outside the perimeter to get to know us, and I really appreciated getting to know them. I live outside the perimeter and just want to share with you about the petition drive that was done in the last 2 years. In drafting a city map to reflect the community voice outside the perimeter, we started with the compromise that was struck with Tucker at the end of last year's General Assembly. We needed to confirm, however, that the people who lived in the compromise area, in fact, wanted to be included in the city of La Vista Hills. So we did this through a community petition that was spearheaded by a group of residents. This was not a political poll conducted over the phone or outsourced to some political organization. This was done by the folks in the community and took considerable time and effort. The petitioners had personal contact. They took the initiative to get educated about cityhood. They handed out their personal information and committed to voting yes for La Vista Hills. The petition was not intended to be exhaustive, but to demonstrate a minimum level of strong support among the residents in this area. In a few months, more than 1,000 residents in the compromise were committed to the city of La Vista Hills by signing the petition. We are told by local politicians that it's rare for a political cause to draw so many petitioners. The results of this petition are consistent with results from a petition that was done last year by a different set of residents outside the perimeter, which similarly had more than 1,000 signatures in support of the then city of Lakeside. We are confident that the results from both of these petitions reflect the voice of the people who live outside the perimeter and want to be included in La Vista Hills. Consequently, we adjusted the map from the compromise to better reflect the community voice. Who are these petitioners? The community of petitioners transcends school district lines. From the 2 petition drives, about half of the petitioners live in the Lakeside High School attendance zone, and about half live in the Tucker High School attendance zone. These petitioners are not bound by Interstate 285. There are 7 roads that go over and under 285 in just a 4-mile stretch, giving residents seamless and free access to work, school, whether it be public, charter, or private school, shops, restaurants, and fitness activities that are inside the perimeter, all of which are heavily used by neighbors in the compromise area and form part of our identity as a community. I'd like to now introduce you to a few of the neighbors who've been very much involved in this year's petition campaign. Vanessa Goldman.
Thank you. My name is Vanessa Bernstein Goldman. My husband and I live in the North Crest neighborhood, which is located in the northern part of the La Vista Hills map. It is just northeast of Spaghetti Junction. My husband and I have been supportive of the Lakeside Initiative since its inception. We essentially want a change in local governance, specifically greater accountability and political representation. Due to the location of our neighborhood, we do feel that it has been difficult for our voice to be heard, and we believe that La Vista Hills would offer a remedy for that. I am a professional urban planner. I have many years' experience in comprehensive planning, and I've also worked with service delivery strategy arrangements. So I'm very familiar with issues pertaining to service allocation and coordination. Essentially, La Vista Hills is my first choice based on its service proposal. Public safety is my primary concern in my neighborhood. And the city's commitment to a city police force is the key reason for my support. In addition, improvements related to critical infrastructure, including road repair and sidewalk connectivity, is crucial to our community as we continue to change and age. The services as envisioned by La Vista Hills is the reason why I have shown up today to voice support. I have not only signed the petition, I have encouraged neighbors to sign it. Many of my neighbors are in agreement that La Vista Hills would be our first choice. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lori Cobbs, and my family of 3 lives in the Evansdale Elementary neighborhood just outside of 285, which is currently on both the La Vista Hills and Tucker maps. I moved here 5.5 years ago with my husband and then infant son at the urging of friends who described its Mayberry qualities with the joy of parents who had found what they had always dreamed of for their families. We now know dozens of families in the miles surrounding our home. If you view the La Vista Hills Yes petition signatures or drive our streets, you will find that the folks here are aligned with the city of La Vista Hills. I am very active in my community, have spent hours going door to door, and have spoken with dozens about the cityhood movement. And based on these conversations, I know that my neighbors most want to be in a new city that keeps them with the rest of the Lakeside High School community, the same community in which many of our children already play sports, are enrolled in daycare, attend church, go out to eat, and where we do our shopping. Long ago, DeKalb County chose to create small neighborhood schools, and since then, many of those schools have fostered close-knit, vibrant, and critical communities that make DeKalb a place families want to raise their children. I beseech you to look at the map and see the communities which transcend the superficial borders, such as interstates and major thoroughfares. Instead, please heed the harder to see, but infinitely more important community boundaries. Please keep the Evansdale Elementary neighborhood within the boundaries of La Vista Hills. We are not Tucker. We are La Vista Hills, and we need to be La Vista Hills. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Eichenberg. I am the president of the Arbor Springs Homeowners Association. Arbor Springs is a neighborhood that is just a little bit west of Henderson Park. I agree with what you've heard from the others who've spoken here already. This area of La Vista Hills is where we spend the majority of our time. It's where we go to church. It's where we do social activities. It's where a lot of our kids go to school. So we feel it's very important for us to be included in that. But most importantly for our neighborhood comes down to the community safety issue. And we just feel that the city of La Vista Hills offers a better and more viable plan for how it's going to deal with especially the police force. We think this is a much better fit for the community that we live in. We have been included in last fall. We were included in every single map that was the city of Lakeside up until the last minute compromise that happened literally at the very last minute. And we just want an opportunity for our voice to be heard, that it is a strong, strong opinion of our neighborhood that we be part of the city of La Vista Hills. And we would definitely like the chance to vote on that. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julius Paisley. My family moved to DeKalb County in 2003. Today I'm asking for the neighborhood that I live in the Lizzie Elementary community that borders the proposed city of Tucker to be part of La Vista Hills. For the past 11 years, I've lived through the good and the bad in DeKalb County. Our family still believes that the county provides some good services, but I believe that formally aligning with the city of La Vista Hills improve these services. Each and every one of us up here has mentioned the police force, perhaps the control of parks, zoning. These things would greatly improve with the city of La Vista Hills. My family volunteers in the community because we are part of like-minded people. My son has attended Lizzie Elementary School. He's now a third grader since he was in kindergarten. My wife volunteered as the PTO president at Lizzie Elementary School last year. I serve as a youth coach in the Tucker Football League, which serves children in both DeKalb and Gwinnett counties. None of these activities would change our schools, but it would change those things that we are focusing on. Public safety is what we're all really focusing on. I would ask that the people that live in this map, that you consider my vote and not allow someone else that lives outside of the proposed city limits to decide what happens to me. Thank you all so much.
Good afternoon, representatives. My name is Daniel Chapman, and I'm a volunteer for La Vista Hills Yes. I grew up in the community, and it's the place that my wife and I chose to settle once again as we raise our young family. I come before you today to discuss our vision for two financially strong cities that will be capable of sustaining themselves and of ensuring that we'll have a successful future as part of DeKalb County and for the whole county. That vision depends on the sensible division of the commercial and the industrial parcels that are currently in both cityhood proposals. To ensure that it includes sufficient industrial and commercial property that is revenue-generating property to sustain its residents. Volunteers for La Vista Hills have been mindful of the need for that balance as we have responded to annexation proposals of existing cities, to the aspirations of our neighbors in Tucker to form a city, and to the expressed desires of residents for their neighborhoods to be included or excluded from our map. As a result of this process, and also of the merger of the City of Briarcliff and the City of Lakeside proposals, La Vista Hills has emerged as a proposed city of over 72,000 residents. The La Vista Hills footprint would include residents surrounding the North Lake commercial and industrial areas on 3 of 4 sides. That commercial center would constitute an important part of the city's financial foundation. Because despite our substantially larger population, La Vista Hills does not enjoy the wide swaths of industrial property that our neighbors in Tucker enjoy in the Mountain Industrial Boulevard area. For these reasons, we believe that our proposal provides for an equitable and proportional distribution of commercial and industrial property in the North Lake area that matches the size of each one of the proposed cities and also the other revenue-generating properties available to those cities, as well as the wishes of the neighborhoods surrounding that commercial and industrial area. Our projections show that such a division would result in nearly identical commercial and industrial revenue per capita for each of the two proposals. Again, it's important to stress that our success is tied to Tucker's success, which is tied to DeKalb's success, and that's very important for all of us. We have also received information from North Lake business community members that have indicated that they would support this division of property and it would allow for an efficient delivery of the services that La Vista Hills and Tucker has proposed to provide to its citizens. I thank you for your consideration and for your efforts on behalf of our communities. And with that, I will pass the microphone to Mary Kay Woodworth for a few closing comments. Thank you.
And I promise you this is the end of the presentation. I'm Mary Kay Woodworth. I'm the co-chair of La Vista Hills Yes with Alan Bennett. Thank you for allowing the supporters of our proposed city to speak with you today. Both La Vista Hills and Tucker were very disappointed, and we regret that we could not come to an agreement and that we had to hand this task to you. to make this decision. Both of us cities, I believe, share the desire and the goal of creating two vibrant, viable cities within DeKalb County, which will make the county stronger. While the new city of La Vista Hills may not be the 120-year-old historical community that is the community of Tucker, our proposed blended community, both inside and outside of the perimeter, is comprised of neighborhoods and residents who are active, committed, and motivated to strengthen, support, and improve our areas. Through local representation, fiscal responsibility, and superior service delivery to meet the needs of the entire city, we look forward to a referendum for cityhood and the opportunity to create a new city and new history in DeKalb County. Our boundaries have changed, and they will continue to change before the cityhood bill reaches the General Assembly. The changes have reflected the desires of citizens who have desired to be in our boundaries and, yes, to be outside of our boundaries. The demonstration of our willingness to listen to the residents and change the map, I think, shows that we are listening, and that particularly the outside the perimeter portion of the citizens with our merger with the Briarcliff effort is a very integral part of our new city. We believe the larger community, once again, both inside and outside the perimeter, have benefited from the North Lake commercial area for 50 years. And we believe that both cities should enjoy the benefit and responsibility that comes with a healthy business community. Although the business community doesn't have the opportunity to vote, we believe that they will support us and Tucker in our efforts, and we can create two strong cities. We hope that we have provided ample justification for the boundaries that we have presented today. We also hope you will confer with Bill Floyd, who was appointed the arbitrator of our mediation with Tucker, and also with the elected representatives who represent all of our areas for their input as well. We'll be happy to provide a synopsis of our talking points and the presentation today, along with any other data, economic information that Dan had mentioned to you after this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee have questions for any of the La Vista people?
Ms. Woodworth, is that right?
Yes,
Woodworth,
sir.
you said?
Woodworth, yes, sir.
You talked about changing the map.
Yes, sir.
Tell me just a little bit about that, how you've changed it.
Well, very briefly, when we merged our two organizations, we had a great deal of overlapping. The Lakeside effort and the Briarcliff effort had a great deal of overlapping areas. And we reached out to the different communities, on both outside and inside the perimeter, to determine, to let them self-determine where they wanted to be, particularly in the south area, which is not your job today. They have a lot of options and confusion. So we realize that there are areas that are not going to be because of the no island rule. On this map today, you'll see a little portion carved out. That is the Executive Park Choa proposed annexation. That is just to demonstrate, that is an integral part of our community, but we really realize that the potential is quite high that will not be in our map. I know there are other communities that still are polling and petitioning to see if they want to be in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? You want to? Okay. All right. Well, why don't we? Okay.
And we'll be happy to answer afterwards too.
Well, Chairman Hamilton has a sort of a question for me, so
Okay.
we
I'm
can
off
do
the
that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is really a clarification that I feel like that the people that are involved in this process deserve to hear the answer to. And before I ask that question, I'll just be real candid. I'm not happy to be here. This goes outside our very specific rules. And so I say that. I'm happy to be here as part of the process, but I'm not going to vote for any map that doesn't meet the right criteria.
Yes.
I'm very disappointed that the sides were not able to come together, and I think it should have been over at that time, but it's not, so we'll go ahead and do our due diligence. But having said that, I want to kind of feed into the question that I just want to clarify, and I thought it'd be good if we did this publicly so there's no confusion. It's my understanding, Mr. Chairman, that our goal or our options are to come up with a unanimous decision let me back up. If this committee, the five of us, cannot come up with a unanimous, agreed-upon map, then this issue, by December 31st, this issue goes away. And any new cityhood starts the 2-year process as it always has next session. So if this committee does not reach a consensus, if we don't get 3 of us to sign off on a map, then this effort is over. Just want to verify that that's your understanding at this particular time.
Yes,
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No,
I want to make sure I know what the rules are.
That's my understanding. Yes.
Okay.
If we can't come up with a map that at least 3 of us can vote for, then yes,
This effort's over, and then next session, all bets are. I mean, whatever starts again next session starts again in the normal process.
Yes, we are. I mean, you know, as a former chairman of the House Governmental Affairs Committee, our committee.
Well, I know this process very well.
Yes, this committee has rules, and cityhood is a 2-year process, and we'll, you know, as this day goes on, I'll stress some things, and I will recommend to our committee that we make a few recommendations to both cityhood proposals. We generally require, and I know both cities have done this in the past, feasibility studies to be done. Well, now maps are different and could end up, as this process ends, being very different than what they were when these feasibility studies were done. I think we have to take that, we as a committee have to take that into account, and certainly the folks putting forward these efforts need to take that into account.
Right.
So yes, if the 5 of us fail to draw a map, then we're done. The 5 of us are done as far as this process goes.
Okay.
Now, I mean, I think nothing at any point stops the 2 groups from coming together and saying, "Hey, you know what? We've had a breakthrough, and we can agree on this." So,
well, and my reason for that is there really is a continued urgency that if the people in this room want something to happen, they better get their act together and come up with a recommendation that we can approve. Which leads me to my next question. It's also my understanding, and I want to clarify this, that the approval of a map, that map might be La Vista Hills and Tucker. It might be La Vista only. It might be Tucker only.
Those options are on the table for us as a committee, yes.
Right. And I say that as much as anything from a negotiation standpoint, that if you really want a city, I hope that y'all don't put the 5 of us back in some room where we're arbitrarily drawing lines, doing things that we probably are not the best people to make those determinations. Because, as I said earlier, because this process has been changed, knowing that it still has to go before the voters as a referendum, it still has to pass the General Assembly and get signed by the governor. But so a follow-up of that is, if we approve a 1-city or 2-city map, it's also my understanding that map then will come back to the opportunity for that map to come back to the House Governmental Affairs Committee should someone want to craft legislation to support that. But at that particular point, it's pretty much an up or down vote. It's not now we're going to renegotiate the boundaries and the maps. Right. The map is settled, and so once that process is done, because we're going outside our normal rules, that is the process. Just want to verify that.
Yes, that would be the process. And as you know, just so everybody here knows, the way the Georgia legislature works, the way our laws work, we operate on a biennium. In other words, a bill can be alive for 2 years, but since an election has intervened, the bills that were introduced last year are dead. So new legislation has to be introduced next year. And so if we are, the 5 of us are successful in crafting a map, and that map is something that the 2 cityhood groups say we can live with that and we'll move forward, then legislation has to be drawn up. We are not going to be deciding, when trash is picked up, what the city council lines may or may not look like. None of that stuff. We're merely, what is this boundary between these 2 proposed cities? And if we can do that, then legislation can move forward.
And that legislation would move forward, and there would be no requirement to make it a 2-year bill. It could pass next year.
Right. Chairman Carter of the full House Governmental Affairs Committee will waive the rule of a 2-year process since we've gone through much of that already.
Okay. And I appreciate you allowing me and indulging to just clarify this, because I just think it's very important that we all publicly understand
Yes.
what the rules are going to be of this as we move forward, because I can just, having chaired the full committee in the past, I can just assure you that there will be some happy people and some unhappy people no
Sure.
matter what the decision is, and I want to make sure everybody feels like that they knew what the rules were at
Well,
the beginning of this process.
and I'd add further, I think the fact that the 5 of us, 3 of us don't live in DeKalb County, there's a very good chance that hopefully folks won't be outraged. But hopefully we'll come up with, if we're successful, we come up with something that people can live with. But I think if there was a solution out there that would make everybody happy, I think the 2 groups would have already found it. So we're already in the less than optimal situation here. So,
and my final comment is, I just want to clarify my earlier position. I'm going to take this very serious, and we're going to try to come to a map that makes sense. But I'm not going to approve a map that I'm not convinced is in the best interest of the citizens of those respective areas. And so I don't want anybody to think that it's a done deal that some map is going to automatically be done, at least from my perspective, that there's going to be an approved map.
Thank you. Ms. Oliver.
This is a follow-up in part to the process discussion, which is very important to have publicly. I appreciate you recognizing that there are other variables in relation to annexations that impact the financial viability of these entities we're talking about. And to the extent we are going possibly to waive the 2-year rule and not require an additional feasibility study, I think that it's a greater obligation on you, the proponents, and on us who are trying to evaluate this to really look at financial data that is shifting. The possible annexations that are relevant to my inquiry all relate to my exact district. Chamblee annexation, Brookhaven annexation, City of Atlanta annexation, Decatur annexation are all in the 82nd House District. So I'm particularly paying attention to these annexations. There are other legislators that share these areas with me in these borders, like Representative Mosby and Representative Mayo and Senator Alina Parent, who is here, all of whom are here today. But these annexations change financial viability quotients. And here's my question to both groups. To the extent you're able, and you might not be able today, and you might not be able because of the uncertainties, for instance, of Brookhaven's acquisition, possibly of commercial properties, but to the extent you're able, I really want to know how your maps relate to the financial viability, the changes of your feasibility vis-a-vis commercial districts. This gentleman said that it would this map makes the commercial areas equal. Well, I'm not sure what this map is you're talking about, and for those of you that may be coming afterwards, that's just more detail and more data. If we're going to not require new feasibility studies, and if we're going to allow modifications on unknown annexations, the financial data on the commercial area becomes more relevant to me as we move forward with proposed viable city options. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would anybody from like to respond to that, or have any additional comment on that?
Yes, thank you for your comment, Representative Oliver. It's absolutely essential, and with each potential proposal and every contingency that we could come up with, we, Volunteers for La Vista Hills, yes, have done our best efforts based upon the basis of information that we obtained from the Carl Vinson Institute study and our own research, which has calculated the value of each particular commercial industrial parcel with regard to its assessed value and likely revenue contributions. We have come up with many different scenarios that we believe could lead to a viable city, both for us and for our neighbors in Tucker. And so we'll be happy, to the degree that you would like them, to share any and all of that data with you and with other members who may be interested in it. Thank you.
Any other member of the committee have a question? Okay. All right, this time we will thank you very much for your presentation. We will now move on to the proposed city of Tucker and have their group come forward and give us their presentation. There we go. Yeah, please be on a microphone because there are people online watching. We can do that, yeah. What's the, tell me there's a little plate in the front there with a number. Look back, 20? 12. All right. Okay. All right, test that mic, Frank, and see how it works. No. Try the one next to it. Is that 11? All right, give that one a shot. Can y'all hear him? All right, we're getting this mic hooked up. Well, it's on, but go ahead and start, and we'll turn them both on. Go ahead and start, and I think the people in the room can hear you. Hopefully the people at home can hear you, and then we'll try this one back here. Stay as close to those two mics as you can, sir. All right, we'll start your 20 minutes now, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all the committee members for taking on this difficult but important task ahead of you, as you've all described. I'm Frank Allman. I'm with Tucker 2015, representing our board and our volunteers and our supporters. We're here as requested to talk specifically.
1 second, Frank. We've got this mic working, so why don't you make sure the folks at home can hear.
How's that? We on? All right. Well, thank you very much for your service on a difficult task, as you've outlined, and as we've been participating in for quite a while now. You asked us to come today to talk specifically about borders, why our borders make sense, why we've drawn the map that we've drawn. Our entire presentation is on that subject specifically, so you won't hear anything about why we think our solution to public safety is smarter, why we think school borders don't influence this. We're going to talk specifically about the borders of the Tucker map as it's been presented over the last year and a half or so. We want to help you find a solution that's respectful of our longstanding community, but also allows our neighbors to create a second city and to pursue their own vision of local control, just as we hope to do. So we have a couple of maps. This is the map of Tucker as it is and has been. It's very much like it's been since we first began advocating for it. So we're here to talk about why those borders make sense. We're here to talk specifically about, that's the La Vista Hills map sort of superimposed on it, so that you can see the difference in the overlay area. So we're talking about borders, but what we're really talking about is the 23,000 people who live in that overlap area, along with a significant commercial district and other business interests. So that's right. So Our focus is on how to draw borders that make sense for a new city, and what happens, what's the effect on the 23,000 people that are in this area that we're having a dispute over. It's important to note, of course, that these decisions that we and you somewhere in the process of this will come together on is that these are very big long-term decisions. Obviously, cityhood is something that's going to outlast all of us, all of our lifetimes, generational impact. So it's on the 23,000 people in the overlap. It's on the other 30,000 people in what we call the city of Tucker. It's a very long-term thing, and that's at the heart of how we came to draw this map. So last year you heard the positive story of the Tucker community from residents and your fellow legislators, and the ongoing theme was that Tucker makes sense. So today we'll focus on how the seriousness of those decisions drove us to think through this map and why the map of Tucker makes sense. So it's a map, first of all, that's dedicated to the true vision of cityhood. It creates smaller, more manageable government for local control. This map of Tucker creates a city of about 53,000 people, just slightly larger than Brookhaven as a point of reference. If you made this city alongside that city, and that disputed area was entirely in Tucker, you'd have a city of about 53,000 in Tucker and something very similar in La Vista Hills. If you were to make a La Vista Hills as it's drawn and remove all that area from Tucker, you'd have a La Vista Hills that's more than twice the size of Tucker, leaving Tucker with about 30,000 people, and La Vista Hills, as they said, with something in excess of 72,000. I want to pause just long enough to point out a fine point about what was said about commercial property. They did not say they want to divide commercial property evenly, or in some ways not even equitably. What they said is they want commercial revenue per capita to be equal across the two cities. That means if their city's twice as large as Tucker, they've got to have twice the commercial property as Tucker in order to make that equation come out. So this is not, if you understand my point. So what we're recommending is two cities of roughly equal size, pursuing their own visions of local control, economic progress, and so forth. Ours is an inclusive map, well-balanced demographically and economically, with a mix of residential, commercial, and industrial properties. Because our map is very much like the map that we started out with and that we had our feasibility conducted on, our feasibility study still very closely applies to the map that you see here. This map wouldn't require a new feasibility study to be done. You can do a Tucker that looks like this, shaped like this, with all the economics and demographics that are in it right now, whether you do another city or not. Tucker's good to go. It's demonstrated its economic feasibility on this map. And finally, it's a map that's remained true to the community. It was drawn in the right way, which is what we want to demonstrate to you today, and it makes sense. Where it made sense to do so, we've already cooperated with our neighbors on annexations. With Doraville to the north, we removed a piece of our map and they annexed that part. To our south, we removed a piece for Clarkston for the same reason. They've already had their annexation votes. So the question was for us and now for you, how do you draw a map for a new city? Where do you start? Tucker's a well-known place. People know where Tucker is generally, but it's never been a city and it's never had an official map. So how do you get started? How would you get started if you had to sit down and draw a map? A lot of people thought Tucker was already a city. Of course it's not. So what do you do? We want to tell you what we did. And we want to show you some stuff. A little bit of it's going to be kind of dry. You'll have to bear with us on some talk about the federal government. Some of it's old history. You'll have to bear with us. But it'll all come together and make sense in the end of our presentation, just as our map does. So the first sort of category for those things is federal recognition. The Census Department, the Census Bureau, has something they call a Census County Division. This is all across the United States. Every place is in a Census County Division. In DeKalb County, it's divided into 5. Tucker is one of those, and it's the only one named after a place that's not already a city. The others have names like Doraville and Atlanta and Decatur. Tucker's identifiable enough as a place that they named this census division for Tucker. What you're seeing, and you'll see throughout this presentation, I have a pointer, I could use it, right? The blue is the proposed map of Tucker, and so the overlay and sort of the gray there is the Tucker Census County Division. this part over here is part of that division that's not in our map. It extends all the way to a place called Oak Grove, which itself is a recognizable, people know where Oak Grove is. And it didn't make sense for us to extend that far and call that Tucker. It didn't make sense, so we didn't do it. There's another census definition called a census designated place. Everyone is not in a census designated place. This is a definition the Census Department uses for a place that basically it looks and acts and feels like a city, but it's not incorporated. And they use it for their statistical purposes and so on. You see the definition there, and it's in your packet. But that overlay of the light color on top of the blue is how the census designated place fits within the map that we've proposed for Tucker. Continuing, the third sort of federal recognition is a zip code. A lot of people don't know zip codes weren't created, they weren't used until 1963. In 1963, Tucker got a zip code, 30084, and it's always been that way, and there it is today. A zip code's not a great way to draw a map for a city, but it does sort of inform the question of where is this place. A lot of people identify with their zip code. The trouble with using it to draw lines is it's for the convenience of the post office, and they'll change it as their needs change and as their service areas and populations change. Nonetheless, we've laid it over the Tucker map to give you a general idea. Let me pause here to tell you something. Whoa, excuse me. Wow, look where I went. Okay. This is Interstate 285. So the area that we're talking about, the North Lake or inside the perimeter area, we're going to talk about some more, but that's to help you get your bearings. So you see that the zip code extends inside the perimeter into that North Lake commercial area, and it also extends out into Gwinnett County, which is that northeast diagonal line there. So one more piece of the puzzle that says where would a Tucker map begin and end? What would it look like? The zip code is part of that. In state government, we have the Department of Transportation that recognizes Tucker in any number of ways. So you see along the western border there are a couple of exits for La Vista Road and Tucker. That's where you go to Tucker. You go take 285 to the Tucker exit. Farther north, you have the Chamblee-Tucker Road exit. That's the road that goes from Chamblee to Tucker. And there's a road there. Along the southern border is US 78. That's the Stone Mountain Freeway. You have a couple of signs there that point you to Tucker at Hugh Howell Road, at Mountain Industrial Boulevard. This is where you get off the highway to go to Tucker. And even out in some of your areas, Mr. Chairman, along Highway 29, there are a couple of directionals that tell you which way and how far it is from Lawrenceville to Tucker. So the state recognizes a certain perimeter as being part of Tucker. So here's this inside the perimeter part of the map that I was describing to you. So you have 285 that runs north and south right here. This is the La Vista Road exit for Tucker. This is outside the perimeter toward Main Street Tucker. This is inside the perimeter toward North Lake Tucker. We've said from the beginning that North Lake is and always has been closely associated with Tucker. And that didn't change just because they ran an interstate through the middle of town, which is what they did, and we're going to talk about it. In fact, it was a little scandalous at the time. This is an article from the 1991 Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It's about Tucker and the success of Tucker and its growth and population increases and so forth, but it's specifically about the impact of Interstate 285. Here's part of what it says. In the 60s came the push for a new highway to divert traffic from the already clogged interstates through Atlanta. The perimeter was coming to Tucker. The major highway brought offices and retail complexes like North Lake Mall to Tucker's west side. Interstate 285 sliced through Tucker's west side in the 60s, 1969 to be exact. I run into people who think 285 has been there since the creation of man. It's really not very long. This is a map that accompanies that article that sort of proscribed Tucker, if you will. It's a little bit hard to see, so we've superimposed it over the map that we're proposing for Tucker. And you can see that that map at that time made a point that North Lake was clearly part of Tucker, despite the fact that 285 ran through the middle of it. And you see the rest of the outline that they used in sort of their real estate section for people who were looking for homes around town. Where was Tucker? How did I know when I was in Tucker? Okay, so I'm going to bore you just a bit more with a little history. See if I can get there. This is the area we're talking about. This is the area really where Tucker was born. There was a man named Greenville Henderson in the early 1800s who served his country honorably in the military, and when he came home, the governor of Georgia gave him 3,000 acres of land right inside that box. His name's Greenville Henderson. He built a mill. He made some whiskey. He grew some apples and some other produce. He carted it down south to Montreal Road, put it on the railroad, sold it around the country. That yellow line that you can sort of see right there, I gotta get my buttons right. That's Henderson's Mill Road. That's where that comes from. That's where Tucker began. That was the first sort of institutional thing about Tucker way back prior to the Civil War. The census sheet that you just saw, let's see if I can get to the right place. Sorry. This is the last census that they did by hand like this. You've probably seen these kinds of things before. A census taker went around house to house and wrote down who's the head of the household, how many children you got, that kind of thing. And the point of us showing you this is just that these are all addresses, 4 pages of addresses on Henderson Mill Road for the 1940 census, every one of them marked as being in Tucker, Georgia. Still inside the perimeter, one other interesting landmark we want to point out to you. This is the area we're talking about. Excuse me. Right in here, we're still inside the perimeter, just south of La Vista Road. There's a gigantic radio tower there built somewhere in the 1940s. It's WSB's transmitting tower. These are archival pictures from Georgia State. There's hundreds more that you could find if you had a great assistant like Matthew Lee. All noting, here's the tower, here's the advancing technology, all in Tucker, Georgia, broadcasting for WSB. That tower is still there, still broadcasts. It's in the middle of a place called North Lake Tower Festival now. They built a shopping center around it, and this is kind of the centerpiece. But it's still there, still broadcasts, still in the Tucker zip code, inside the perimeter, right where that arrow is pointing. Okay, enough history. People and businesses are another way we know where Tucker is, especially businesses. But people know where Tucker is. When they ask you how to find North Lake, how to find Tucker, they say get on 285, follow the signs to Tucker, go inside the perimeter for North Lake Tucker, go outside the perimeter for Main Street Tucker. Businesses especially, when they sit down to make a plan to define their market, who they're going to serve, who they're going to sell to, where they're going to do business, what they're going to be connected to, it's a strong statement when they define their market. This little Asian eatery was from a recent article. They're constantly out there. But where you see it pointing is well inside the perimeter at Briarcliff Village. This Asian eatery announced, we're coming to Tucker in Briarcliff Village. One of our favorite places, the Blue Ribbon Grill. One's owned by Ludlow Porch, for you guys who've been around long enough to know that name. Okay, I'm told to hurry. In Tucker. This is the local Chick-fil-A operator. Let me back up one. There's 2 dots there that represent 2 Chick-fil-A units, one in Main Street Tucker, one in North Lake Tucker. The same operator operated the one nearest Main Street successfully for a long time. He then went to the North Lake location, which was new from the ground up, operated that one. 2 days ago, he was given operational control of both the Tucker locations, and here's what he said. On December 1st, we'll be returning to Tucker Station. We'll operate both locations in Tucker. We believe in the future of Tucker North Lake area and are working hard to see that our community continues to grow and flourish. It's a pretty powerful statement when a business person defines their market where they're going to earn their livelihood. I'm really going to talk fast, so you're going to have to listen fast now. So in 2013, an even stronger statement was made. The businesses in the core of Tucker formed a CID, a self-taxing district where they agreed among themselves to tax themselves beyond all the public taxes so that they could devote that money to economic development in their area, enhance security, enhance landscaping for the business community. Tucker did that in downtown Main Street Tucker. Earlier this year, 67 businesses in this area, this North Lake Tucker area around the perimeter, voted, not a poll, not a questionnaire, not somebody imposed it on them. They themselves voted to tax themselves further, to attach themselves to this existing CID, and to coordinate their efforts along this entire corridor. So the whole thing is in our map. when they did so, they said, we need to change the name. This needs to be called Tucker North Lake. And so they did, for the purpose of enhancing, I can't read it from here, inclusion, cooperation, that sort of thing, so they can do master planning together. All right, moving along. See that little dot right there? That's a property owner way up there in Tucker who desperately wanted to be part of the CID, but he wasn't connected to it. So they made an allowance. They took his application. They let him do it. And it gives us a good opportunity to talk about that northern part, which is also part of the overlay. So we're going to zoom in on that. There's the property. There's a QT station there, some retail. This is the intersection of Chamblee-Tucker Road coming in from the left and Tucker-Norcross Road coming in from the top. These are the roads that came from other places to Tucker. This is where they intersect. This is where that is, firmly in the heart of Tucker. Is, was, has been. In that place, you see all these signs, which you can't read from there, but they're in your handouts. Road names, subdivision names, shopping center names, all with Tucker. Chamblee-Tucker Road, Tucker-Norcross Road. The map of the city of La Vista Hills includes everything on the left side of this area. Following me? Their map comes all the way to the left side of that dot. And so, these areas are included in their map, including Pleasant Hill Baptist Church, which has been in Tucker since 1867, been in a lot of different buildings. They've moved themselves several times. When you go to church there this Sunday, you're going to get a bulletin that says you're in Tucker, Georgia. They're in Tucker, always have been in Tucker. On the subject of churches, if we move down Chamblee-Tucker Road to the west and talk about this area that's also in the overlap, there's a Catholic church there called Holy Cross. Here's a map of where they are. They sit on the south side of Chamblee-Tucker Road. This relates them to Evansdale Elementary School that you've heard mentioned, and there's some people in that area who feel like they want to be a part of La Vista Hills. This is well north of that, half mile, 3/4 of a mile as the crow flies. In between there, several thousand people make their homes. Holy Cross Church just had a jubilee. Priest issued a letter and said this. This is in the last month. How wonderful that the Holy Cross Parish family just finished a year of jubilee, celebrating 50 years as a special and holy place in Tucker, Georgia, where God reigns. I'm not saying this lightly, and we don't make this stuff up. Indeed, he does. So we have this map of Tucker. Now, in the last, let me mention one other thing. Communities of interest. It's a term that flows through all of this. It's hard to define. People mean different things when they say it. Tucker, as you see it here, is a community of interest. It is full of civic and neighborhood associations of all kinds. Many of the people who run them are among the 20,000 people, 23,000 people we're talking about taken out of this map. This is the Tucker Civic Association. It looks very much like the map of Tucker, and that's not by coincidence. They've been serving long and hard all the needs of the community. Parks, strategic planning, public safety, quality of life, all of those things. These are some other organizations in the Tucker community. We don't have time to talk through all of them. But the point is, these are not organizations. These are groups of people. These are groups of citizens of Tucker who've devoted their lives, who devote their weekends, their evenings, their family time to upholding and creating a community of interest in Tucker. So, in the past few days, you've gotten emails, you've gotten letters, you've gotten phone calls, you're getting all kinds of things. It gets difficult, and we recognize that. Our negotiations were not easy, and we desperately wanted to reach an agreement during that process. We know it's difficult because for 2 years, even before we knew cityhood was viable for Tucker, we were listening to our community. The first thing we did was commission a poll, an expensive poll from Landmark Communications, who some of you guys know, to be sure that we were not out in front of the community, but that we were listening to their genuine wants and desires. We've held countless meetings, big meetings in churches and public places, small, intimate meetings in people's living rooms with their neighbors. One minute, I promise. In all the areas of Tucker, including the area where these 23,000 people live that you're having to consider. We talk to them when we go to the store, to the Starbucks, to the local 7, to Matthew's Cafeteria. We see them in all those places. We see them at park cleanups. We attend every event that Tucker sponsors. Tucker Day, the Tucker Farmers Market, we have a booth. Taste of Tucker, Tucker Chili Cook-Off, we're there, engaging, standing ready to answer any kind of question or concern that people have. We've listened to all these people, and we've met with the business community. Members of the North Lake Business Association, the CID, both before and since the merger and creation of the new, larger version. We've been immersed in these conversations day in and day out, and we've heard from people who believe their voices are being shut out by a loud few who claim to represent them and want to take over their neighborhood. They're afraid of causing hard feelings. They don't want to split up their neighborhoods. And so they've silently supported Tucker by sending you emails, and we're going to hand you, if you'll have it, 1,500 pages of emails with their comments, 1,500 people telling you why they want to stay in Tucker, why Tucker is Tucker, why it ought to stay Tucker. Some couldn't be here today because of work and other commitments, of course, but they commented in those emails, and we hope you'll read them because that's their voice. That's their way of speaking to you. So we represent not only the 23,000 people in the overlap area, but the 30,000 who would remain separated from their neighbors if we cut funny lines through Tucker. So the question for you is not, can Tucker do with less? Can we hack away some pieces of Tucker and still leave it viable as a city? The question is, does it make sense to run a line up Crestcliff Drive and split Winding Woods in half that's been there for 50 years? Does it make sense to pull parts of this community out? Does it make sense to leave Henderson Park in Tucker, but the gate to Henderson Park in the city of La Vista Hills? The question is not, can Tucker do with less? The question is there a good reason to split it up? Does the state or the county have an interest in carving this into pieces and make it into something that it's never been before? Or does it make more sense to leave Tucker like this, to let it continue to flourish and add to it the things that a city can do for itself? All those services that we're not going to get around to talking to about today, but the added gravitas, to quote a former vice president of ours, when they go to meet with people about redeveloping the mall, when they go to meet about new businesses moving into the area. That's our vision for a city. That's the kind of thing a city can do launching from a platform like this. And so we leave the question with you today. We think Tucker makes sense. We hope it makes sense to you. We're available for questions today, of course, if you have other hearings in mind. We're happy to meet with you in a smaller group if you have detailed questions about the map and where things run and so forth. But we do sincerely thank you for taking on a really tough job. And we're happy to continue to advocate for Tucker any way that's helpful to you.
All right, thank you. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Thank you for your presentation. Do you think the DeKalb County government's doing a good job?
There's certainly a lot of areas where I would describe the DeKalb County government as dysfunctional.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Does Buckhead cease to exist because it's inside the city limits of Atlanta?
Certainly not.
Okay. Were you part of a compromise last year, Matt, that you agreed to?
Yeah, I was in, well, there were really two meetings. I was at one. Michelle was with the other.
What happened with that?
Well, it's a complicated story. You got something specific that you're interested in knowing about? I mean, what ultimately came of that compromise?
Did you change your mind?
Oh, no, sir. No, we were first and last in the room negotiating for it. We agreed to it, and I think all of y'all were there. The determination was made that the two cities couldn't go forward, and we should all come back again this year.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Hamilton.
Hey, Mr. Chairman. Two questions. First, thank you for the history lesson.
Sure.
I've heard more about DeKalb County than I ever want to hear about in the years that I've been here. Which brings up my question. Tell me about, in your proposal, refresh my memory. You said we weren't going to talk about it today, but we are.
Oh, well, we're happy to.
Tell me what level of service that the city of Tucker will begin providing that you presently do not provide. In other words, Tucker, what are you going to provide? Tell me what you're going to provide.
So, as you're probably aware, there are 11 services that we could provide. We're required to provide at least 3 of them to gain status.
Right.
as
So
a
what are
city.
they?
So
No, don't need a history lesson
3
again.
in
Just
our case-
give it to me quick.
Well, it's an important distinction. The 3 in our case are zoning, parks and recreation, and code enforcement. So those 3 are the first 3 services that we would begin providing from day one.
Okay.
But the reason I mentioned the other 8 out of the 11 is that we have those 8, for example, public safety, police services, in our charter, so that at the will of the people, at the express will of the people, we could stand up a city police department at any time. We volunteers who started advocating for a city of Tucker just don't feel comfortable making, as unelected people, making that decision to take on debt and all the complexity of a police department when we don't have to from the beginning. But
Well,
rather
here's
we
my
let
question.
them
Let me just cut straight to the chase. Most people, and I've sat through a number of these hearings, most people that are creating cityhood, they're doing so because they're not happy, going back to your question, they're not happy with county government services. So if you're that unhappy, why are you doing zone? I mean, how much zoning is there to do in this area?
It's actually critically important in our area,
Really?
the
Okay,
economic
fine.
development issues. But I'll say this
Really
about the
what it
police
is?
department, and,
Okay.
and I'm no defender.
I guess law enforcement is my main question.
Yeah.
Why would you not want to make law enforcement? You know, I remember the proposals during Dunwoody and all the other hearings that voted for Dunwoody 7 times. That's how long that process was.
Yeah.
So how?
Yeah. In our particular case, there are 2 precincts, the 2 DeKalb police precincts within the map that we've shown you for Tucker. Crime in our area last year was down 18%. That was on top of a decrease the year before. I am no
So you're happy
defender-
with law enforcement
I'm
that
no
you received
defender of
from
the DeKalb Police
County?
Department. It could be a whole lot better, but it's not something that we need to jettison given the complexity of doing it otherwise and the lack of a public referendum to say, yes, we want to pay taxes for that.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Here's the other question. You mentioned 23, and this is good for both parties, both sides. You mentioned the 23,000 people, and we also talked about, I think you're the one that said that there was either an economic development or a business tax base or something per constituent. I'd like to know what that is in that 23,000. What? Tell me about the business that is in that that unagreed upon area, and also the population. How does that rate compared to the other parts of the other 2 cities?
Well, the number that I was trying to clarify from La Vista Hills presentation had to do with revenue, commercial revenue per capita, and that's their number. I don't have access to those numbers. I was just trying
Bottom
to
line, here's my
clarify what it
question.
is.
You gave us a history lesson on the community and all the other things. I'm trying to find out if that's really the issue, or there's a tax base in this area that you want to make sure that you get access to.
Well, clearly we need some of that tax base. There's no question about that.
But
It also-
is that the main difference between the 2 groups? They want that tax base there?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right, I'm just
I mean,
I'm
we-
just trying
we
to find
have
out.
dispute over it,
I don't
but-
know that area, so I'm
Yeah.
just trying to find. There's 23,000 of population. I'm not trying to be argumentative.
Yeah,
but
no, not
there's
at
an
all.
area. I'm just trying to find out how much tax base there is in that same area.
Yeah, we could get that for you and provide it to you.
That would be something that I, as a committee member, would like to have an idea of what is the tax base in that overlap area, so that we would find out. No offense to anybody, but how much of it is historical significance and names and subdivisions, and how much of it is, let's just face it, we got to pay the bills. So how much of it is a tax base issue? So I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. No, Mr. Chairman.
We'll get you in a couple minutes. Representative Oliver.
I think you're asking a follow-up question to my concern about a very detailed analysis of the financial base. But for the benefit of my committee members, since I've lived this area my entire life, I think land use control is very, very much
Absolutely.
at the heart of what citizens want. And that is very critically important, more so than you might realize from Harlem, Georgia. And the North Lake 285.
All we have is farms.
Well, they're lovely. They're lovely farms, and
You mind if I sit back here while y'all talk about that?
land use control for my gentleman friends is the deal in my perception, but how you financially marry the financial tax base and your business tax base with total land use control. It's a fascinating tension.
Yep. And one of the areas that DeKalb is, to your question, Representative, where DeKalb has fallen down horribly.
Totally.
Yeah. The three services that I identified for you are among those 11, the three least cost impact, the lowest cost to a city, but by many multiples, the greatest financial prospects for a city. That's where we can have the greatest influence in the fastest possible time and fund future things that are much more expensive and complex if that's what this new citizenry wants to do.
One question for you. It's sort of relating to this. We're getting lots and lots of emails. We're getting lots of emails from folks in that contested area. Some of them are saying we want to be in Tucker. Some say we want to be in La Vista Hills. And one thing and that I will ask you, and I may ask some of you folks who are coming up to speak in favor of La Vista Hills, one of the themes that comes through in emails from people who are in that contested area near Spaghetti Junction who are saying we prefer La Vista Hills to Tucker is that they feel like that La Vista Hills is offering a better range of services. Public safety was maybe perhaps one of the themes that I've heard over and over again in the emails that I looked at. And Tucker's decision not to offer that perhaps pushes people, and this is something I'd like to hear some of you folks who are speaking. If Tucker offered public safety, would some of the folks in this contested area say, I'm happy in being in Tucker rather than La Vista Hills? And as the five of us are going to be figuring out what do we do in that contested area, I think that seems to be a key issue that's been a theme in emails that I'm receiving.
Well, I think you're right. It's a fair question, but I'll just clarify at the risk of being impertinent. We are not without public safety. Tucker is not going to not offer public safety. We think our plan is smarter. So we can talk about why that is. We can have a whole discussion just on that topic. But your question's fair, and the question would also be fair if those people who say they want to be in La Vista Hills were assured that changing their school district would not be an outcome of cityhood one way or another. I think you might also get some different answers. So those are the kinds of questions, if I would offer advice, absolutely.
All right. Chairman Hamilton? Oh, Michelle, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to add, there are a lot of people that you're probably getting emails from that would juxtapose that perfectly by saying that they're very happy that we're having a fiscally responsible startup and that we're looking at things that Tucker already has. And in your packet, you'll see all of the things that Tucker has done for generations in the business community well already. So we're starting conservatively so that we can be responsible with the dollars and then get a good building block before we go forward, buying police cars and police stations and all those capital improvements. But in no way will we stop the citizens from adding whatever services they feel that they need in the community.
Chairman Hamilton.
Thank you. This is a question you're not going to want to answer, I assume. You may. And it requires a yes or no answer. And I want to give the other group an opportunity to the same question, and here's the question. I'll try to phrase it so that it gives you a minimal amount of pain. As I said earlier, zero cities, one city, two cities. Those are our three options. Is Tucker prepared to not become a city if you don't get that area?
This entire overlap area?
Right.
Oh, no, sir.
So lawyers always want to revise the question,
well, you'll have your chance, but assuming you get one bite of the apple.
Yeah, if we were given an ultimatum.
Does Tucker still want to become a city? Because I will share with you that there have been those that have told me, I'm not saying it's right, I've gotten emails from both sides also, but that y'all don't really want to be a city, you just want to prevent La Vista Hills from getting us here. So I'm going to make it very, very simple.
No, please, quiet, please.
There you you go. Those are people who've not
No,
talked
I'm
to us.
Okay, hey.
okay. Yes or no? So it sounds like that you are committed to be a city of Tucker, whether you get that area or not.
We are, and the people of Tucker are, overwhelmingly, yes.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your answer.
All right, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Frank, Michelle, thank you for your presentation. Okay, we are, okay. All right, well, let's put that question, if this committee decides, I guess I'll restate the question, Chairman Hamilton, correct me if I'm wrong, if this committee decides that this contested area should all go to Tucker, that they have made a compelling case and that contested area should go to Tucker, are you prepared to, is La Vista Hills prepared to move forward in that, given that hypothetical scenario?
I don't know that I can give a really short answer, but the short answer yes or no.
Hold on, let me get your mic, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The answer is yes. We believe in cityhood. We would have serious questions about financial viability. If all of that commercial property went elsewhere, all of the people ended up, without the commercial property in the city of La Vista Hills. And honestly, I know it is beyond the purview of this committee, but death of a thousand cuts. If the Brookhaven annexations go forward, if the City of Atlanta proposal goes as far as the Toco Hill Shopping Center, if the City of Tucker gets all of the North Lake and interstate businesses, you would leave a proposed City of La Vista Hills with very little commercial base.
And one
so
quick
we would want to
question.
go forward. Whether we could go forward would be a real question.
Right. Thank you. And I meant to ask this earlier, but for those of us, I used to go to North Lake Mall when the old Farrell's was there and get that on my birthday and get that giant thing of ice cream with 75 scoops of vanilla. But I understand there's North Lake Mall and then there's a place known as North Lake Festival.
Yes.
Can maybe you point out where that is and maybe whoever wants to answer just a little bit about what's going on there. So it is.
Yeah, it's inside the perimeter.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Representative Oliver. You had a.
I just want to revise the question, of course, and that is, it's possible that we're going to give you a map that neither of you are going to be happy with, and your job then will to re-engage with your citizens and with your financial data. Isn't that true?
Yes, absolutely.
And you will make the best decision you can after you have re-engaged with your citizens and after you have done your financial analysis and perhaps after you've figured out what Brookhaven or City of Atlanta is going to do. Isn't that true?
That is true. It is, as I believe I can say, it is a hot mess. But we are doing our best. And I think we are doing our best to try to come up with lines that make sense for all of our folks in all of DeKalb County.
Great, thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Representative Scott Holcomb, who, of course, has the happy honor of representing a large chunk of the so-called contested area. So he had some things he wanted to say to the committee. So,
thank you,
Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief because I do want to have the public to have some time to comment, and I know we're already at the 90-minute mark, but I think that there's a perspective that I offer that will be helpful to the committee. As was stated, I represent the 81st House District, which covers a large swath of this, and I believe that I am the only legislator who would reside in the potential city of La Vista Hills. I have some limitations in terms of what I can say, and that is limited to the district that I represent. I can't talk about the areas outside of that. And I'll also say one of the greatest challenges that I have had while trying very diligently is to get a real accurate sense of the will of the people. Candidly, we don't have data that would survive research or scientific analysis. We have anecdote, we have emails, we have phone calls, we have city town hall meetings and door knocking, and that gives us impressions, but we really don't know precisely what the will of the communities are. So with those as caveats, I want to share with you what I have learned through this process, which has been going on for a couple of years. The first thing I would like to say is that I am supportive of referendums. I would like to see us get legislation through so then these communities can have vibrant discussions about whether or not they want to approve the cities. So I support us having referendums. I also support a two-city solution. So my preference would be that a border resolve could be worked out so both a city of Tucker and a city of La Vista Hills can move forward. I think that is also the greatest sense of the people who live there. You would have a lot of disappointment if only one of the proposals moved forward and not both of them. That said, I believe you would also have a lot of disappointment if nothing happens this session. Your words, Chairman Hamilton, were not lost on me, and I understand that what you were doing very strongly was hitting both parties with a wet blanket for them to get together and to continue to negotiate and hopefully resolve these borders. I'm not terribly sanguine that that's going to happen. These groups, I believe, are both groups of goodwill. There's, as you heard, a lot of emotion around this issue. Unfortunately, people who used to be friends are no longer friends over this, and it is a process that has involved some invective. But through that, I believe our job is to make the process as fair and transparent as possible, and it's something that I've been committed to from the beginning. So what are the motivating factors? What I have seen and heard is for Tucker, it is very much a sense of community. You heard a lot about their history. It is very much a sense of community that is driving what they want. La Vista Hills, since it is not the same as Tucker, it is not a historical area, it is driven by much more a sense that they can create a better future for themselves than they have right now being in unincorporated DeKalb County. That is true on many levels, from the corruption scandals that you've seen and also from the Board of Education. While cityhood is not directly tied to education, it is very closely tied in the residents' minds. This is especially true in the Evansdale community. I want to highlight this community to you. One obvious solution for you all to do would be to just divide it along 285. I think people not involved in the process, not understanding the communities, they would just look at that as that would make sense as a natural border. What I can tell you is that people who live north of 285, particularly in the Evansdale community, have a very strong preference for the city of La Vista Hills. I believe that is much more because of education than police services, although that is part of it. And the reason is the former name of the proposal, Lakeside. Evansdale is part of the feeder pattern into Lakeside High School. There is a concern that those who bought their homes there have kids in those schools, if drawn out of that city, would then have their kids go into a different school system. Candidly, that leads me to the next point, which is that this process is very complicated and convoluted, and we have a number of issues in DeKalb County that, while not the charge of this committee, will be impacted, and those are the potential breakaway of the Druid Hills area, which would force a restructuring of the entire school system within DeKalb and the feeder patterns, and also the other annexations. So what I would recommend to you and try to give you some advice, and I know how difficult your charge is, but I do think the decision is going to rest with you all. I do not think the groups are going to be able to make this decision. They have acted in good faith, and they just have very different views, and they're at loggerheads. So while I hope that they will continue to work together, I'm not in any way confident that that will happen. So I think the decision will be yours. So what I would encourage you to do is to try to continue to get as good a sense as you can from the people who live in the contested area. I am continuing to gather the data and will help provide that to you. There are people who within the contested area very much favor Tucker. There are people within the contested area who very much favor La Vista Hills. There are a lot of people who just aren't paying attention, and they're just going to have to deal with what the consequences are. So the Evansdale community in particular, I just want you to know that I have heard very strongly what their preference is, and that preference is much more on the side of La Vista Hills. The final point that I want to share with you is in terms of commercial viability, which of course is very, very important. We don't want to create something here that won't be feasible. In terms of just the process, since in many ways this is an ad hoc process and we're starting something new, we don't have, if you all change the borders, feasibility information that's current and accurate. All the proposals that were done, Lakeside, Briarcliff, and Tucker, have all been adjusted now. So I would very much encourage the committee to force that feasibility to be presented or acquired in some way, because if you think through the phases of this, phase 1 would be the legislation passes. Phase 2 is for there to be a discussion within the communities. I don't know how we could in good faith vote to allow these to move off the floor of the House if we don't even know if they're feasible. So I think that's pieces of information that we need. And on that, with the commercial part, one of the real contested areas is the North Lake area. What I've said many times, I have a lot of concern because at the heart of that is the North Lake Mall. No new malls have been built in the United States since 2006, and so I don't even know if this mall will be around in 10 years, so I have just a little bit of personal concern as to whether that's smart to make the economic engine of it something that may not be around for very long, but that's more of a discussion for part 2 of this process. But the compromise map was strongly disfavored by the North Lake business community. I have talked with many of their members, several of them are here today, and they hated the compromise map. So I would urge you not to go back to the compromise map that was agreed to at the end of the last session, because it is not something that the business community wants. Specifically, it divided the city line along La Vista, which is one of the main arteries that heads through that part of unincorporated DeKalb into Tucker. And one side of the street was one city, the other side of the street was the other city. And the business community did not want there to be separate zoning and separate policing for that area. And so I think it's important, wherever you decide for that to go, whichever proposed city, keep it together. That would be in the best interest of the community. I'd be happy to continue to share my thoughts and observations with you. I commend you for the work that you have in front of you. It's not easy, and thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative Holcomb. A quick question. You mentioned, and maybe you could help describe to us, the compromise map sort of, as I understood it, sort of cut the North Lake area in half along La Vista Road. Is that accurate? So maybe the attempt was roughly half of the North Lake and North Lake Festival area would have been in Lakeside and half in Tucker. Is that a fairly accurate statement, or do you? I'm asking you to describe a map that isn't in the room right now, but any information you can shed on that light would be helpful.
I think that's fairly accurate in that the mall is on one side of the street, and then there's a lot of other businesses on the other side of the street. And probably collectively, if you were to add those up, it would be similar in some, or perhaps even a little bit greater than the mall side.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Oliver, you had a...
I want to follow up a little bit up, because there is an obvious discussion point that we're having now, we may continue to have, about y'all reached a compromise on a particular day at a particular time between Thursday and Monday of some weekend in March 2014. I want to remind the committee members, one of the reasons, my perception, one of the reasons that shotgun compromise didn't go forward is that it wasn't transparent, it wasn't open, it wasn't fair to these thousands and thousands of people who were participating. It had a bad economic analysis, but it really, I think, my perception is one of the reasons Chairman Meadows and others moved back from that compromise is it wasn't a fair, transparent, open compromise. And it sticks in my mind as important to me as to why we need to do a better job this year and not go back to that very unhappily reached shotgun bad plan.
And if I didn't mention, I apologize if I did, and I'm repeating myself, I would strongly recommend that there be legislation to stop any proposed annexations from going forward if these maps are agreed to. because we have had a lot of those issues happening. So in other words, freeze the field, and so these cities could move forward if we could get a deal.
Any more questions for Representative Holcomb? Oh, Chairman Hamilton, yes, sir.
You made a statement, and I just want to kind of make sure I understood. I'm big on clarification. You said that there was I forget how you crafted it. Several businesses, many businesses, the business community, some reference was opposed to the compromise. Can you give me a little bit more detail and specificity to that?
Happy to. The North Lake Business Alliance, or Association, which is an association of businesses in the North Lake community, and that too is difficult to define in terms of geography, but that business association, I'm almost positive, voted unanimously against the compromise map. They unanimously opposed it.
But you're also aware that the CID voted to remain neutral and that they did not have a dog in this fight. That's where I'm trying to determine where which business community that you're talking about.
The North Lake Business Association.
So we just need to find out who that is then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative. All right. At this point, we've taken way longer than I had thought, but it's an important issue, so I'm glad. I think we talked about a lot of important things. So what we'll do now, we'll begin now taking public testimony. I have 47 people signed up. So I'm serious. Yes. So I would let's see here. I want to be fair to everybody. I want to. Are there any volunteers for saying a point that I was going to make has already been covered? All right, we got one. We're down to 46. All right. Let me throw this suggestion out there. What if the leaders of the Tucker and La Vista Hills groups, if there are any particular people that you would like that you know are here that you would like to have their comment taken, we want to hear from as many people as we can. The problem is we're already an hour and a half into this. The five of us need to talk. Okay. Any? All right. Well, I'll just start calling names then, and we'll kind of go. I've got a sheet here that says folks are for La Vista Hills or folks are for Tucker, so we'll just kind of go one by one, and we'll yeah.
There is a representative of the North Lake business community here. If he could be one of the first people to speak, that might be helpful.
All right. Where? What is your name, sir? Were you on the? Okay. Were you on the? What's your name? Were you on the list here?
Yeah, I'm Charles DeWitt. I'm in the middle.
All right, in the middle. There you go. All right. Why don't you go and folks? What I'll ask you is, I hate to tell you this, but if you could limit yourselves to a minute and a half, okay? I know that I know that all of you that this is a very passionate issue and you all care very deeply about all this, but with 46 people signed up, let's. Brevity, it would be very much appreciated.
Something else.
Thank you, sir.
I'll try not to.
All right, Mr. DeWitt, please.
So, I'm Charles DeWitt. I'm the CEO of Resurgence Bank, which is headquartered in the North Lake area, which is getting a lot of the discussion. I'm here really as a representative of the Business Association. We formed the Business Association. There's about 93 businesses involved with that to really focus on the collective voice on matters that will impact that commercial district and obviously its ability to grow. Being centrally located between both cityhood groups, we kind of feel like we're the hidden gem. We understand the importance that both communities have on the future of the commercial district. We also understand that the commercial district is very important to both groups. It's imperative that any division of the North Lake Commercial District be carefully considered and done in a way that promotes economic viability for both groups for many years to come. With a strong business districts, without a strong business district, the cities would struggle to survive. The Business Association supports the creation of two cities whose boundaries will not negatively impact the district or the future economic viability of the very cities the two groups wish to form. We've discussed about the previous border. It went right down La Vista Road. Think of it as Main Street for you guys that don't know that area. One side was in then the lake side, the other side was in Tucker. Not a good idea as a banker. You know, police across the street would have to go to the other, couldn't come to deal with an emergency that we might have at our bank. Same thing with the zoning. So we are strongly recommending that compromise not take place. What we are trying to do is propose a compromise. Ideally, we like the whole commercial district to stay intact, but we realize that may not be in the cards, so to speak. So we have proposed a compromise in an effort to facilitate a border that would mutually benefit both parties. And we polled our members, and 80% of our members suggested or agreed with the kind of a couple suggestions of 285 being the natural border. So now, before that's for our North Lake Commercial District. That's all I'm here to represent. But we think it makes a lot of sense for that area. So we just continue to be open as a business community to work with both groups. We obviously are very invested in this area, and we would love to bring both communities together so we all are thriving.
Thank you. You do have one question, so
Yes, sir.
Representative Hamilton.
Very quick. 93 businesses. What percentage of that is the total business location in that area? And then what is you say you're fully invested. I'd like to know what that economic development tax base is for those either 93 businesses or that area that you're talking about. You probably don't have an answer right now, but I'd like that information.
I can work on that. You don't have any.
All right, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Right.
Okay.
Representative Brockman,
yes.
I have a list of folks for La Vista Hill if you would like to use this. It's shorter.
Okay.
You signed up.
Yeah, let's see. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 signed up to speak in favor of La Vista Hills.
I have.
Would you be? Is your list shorter than that?
My list is shorter than that.
Okay. Well, how about you hand me that list? And while we're doing that, I've got. I'll read out 3 names who are going to speak either against La Vista Hills or for Tucker, and I've got a couple folks who say they want to speak against La Vista Hills. I'm going to count you in the Tucker column, okay?
No, sir.
Why is that not fair?
Because we're not against La Vista Hills, we're for Tucker.
Okay. All right. All right, I'll call these 3 people up who are against La Vista Hills, okay? And then that will be one category, okay? Susan McWorthy, Marjorie Snook, and Diane Medlock-Joy. If the 3 of you would line up and let us know what's on your mind.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
And what was your name, ma'am?
My name is Susan McWethy, and I'm the librarian at Druid Hills Middle School, which is one of the schools that stands to be seriously affected by the changes in DeKalb County governance. And I also represent the Laurel Ridge Shamrock Civic Association, the area roughly to the north and northwest of North DeKalb Mall. Before discussing schools, I draw your attention to the stapled handout, looks like this, that I gave you. And this is the results of a survey, a very recent survey that was done in the Laurel Ridge Shamrock Civic Association, comprising 805 households. And this response rate on our survey was a valid 27%. So we're currently included within the proposed La Vista Hill boundaries, yet you can see that it is not the will of the people of our neighborhood to become incorporated into La Vista Hills. That choice is illustrated in both the head-to-head choice on page 3 and the forced rankings on page 4, where over 70% stated their choice to remain unincorporated. Only 22% chose cityhood. Our situation became extremely complicated when it was clear that there is a serious effort to annex parts of our school cluster into the city of Atlanta. And I also provided you a map that looks like this. I apologize, it's kind of a homemade thing. I did it. But you can see on here that there are 5 elementary schools that feed into one middle school and into the one high school. This is a very high-performing cluster, providing programs such as the International Baccalaureate and STEM. 2 of these elementary schools, plus the high school, stand to be annexed into Atlanta, leaving students remaining in our cluster without a high school. And that says nothing of the fact that McClendon and Avondale elementary schools are completely out of contention for either cityhood or annexation. So with these clashing visions of the future, our neighborhood is caught in the crosshairs. Because we are not contiguous with the city of Atlanta, we cannot even consider annexation unless and until our neighbors in Claremont Heights and Medlock first choose to be annexed. And that is not looking likely, as a recent survey of Medlock residents revealed a strong preference to annex into the city of Decatur, not Atlanta. We have so much to lose, and yet we're basically powerless to do anything proactive to save our schools and neighborhood, especially if we incorporate into La Vista Hills. Incorporation spells the end of any possibility of negotiating to keep our school cluster intact and provides no particular benefits to the people of our neighborhood. With so much at stake and having nothing to gain from cityhood, I'm asking you to consider our concerns and leave us off the La Vista Hills map. Our efforts at this time should be going to defending the integrity of our schools and putting our effort behind the blueprint to redefine DeKalb, and not into incorporating into an unnecessary new city against the will of the majority. Thank you.
One quick question for you, ma'am. Representative Fleming.
Can I ask a couple?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Miss Worthy, McWorthy, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How many homes does your association? How many?
805.
Homes? When were y'all formed?
We're very new. We've only been around for about 3 months.
Are you incorporated?
Yes.
Okay. When did you incorporate?
Well, at least a month and a half ago. I don't know the exact date.
And all 805 of those people asked to belong to your organization?
Yes, and they all received the survey.
So are you generally in favor of the idea of cityhood somewhere or not?
Not. Not according to the data that we received.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, next up, we had either Marjorie Snook or Diane Medlock-Joy. And if you could just identify yourselves, please, ma'am.
Okay. I'm Marjorie Snook. I've
Thank
lived in DeKalb County for 36 years. I've lived in the city of Chamblee, Decatur, and Atlanta in that time, and so my first requirement when I talked to a real estate agent when I was ready to buy a home was, please put me in an unincorporated area. You'll notice all of the people who spoke in favor of La Vista Hills were all people who are outside of the perimeter, which is kind of strange when you look at the boundaries of La Vista Hill, and most of it is inside the perimeter. And there's a pretty good reason for that, and that is it's kind of hard to find people who are very supportive of this idea inside the perimeter. Living in my neighborhood for 10 years, I know very few people who are actually in favor of this idea. And to give a little bit of context, and there's been, I checked online, there were 1,200 people that signed the petition for La Vista Hills. That's 1.6% of people who live in the area. In the same amount of time that petition has been up, 12,000 people have signed a petition to get Georgia Public Broadcasting off of 88.5, the Georgia State radio signal. So we have 10 times as many people who are passionate about college student DJs as who want a city in this area. And so you ask what we're going to just be able to vote it down, right? So it shouldn't matter. And that's what I anticipate is going to happen if it goes to a referendum, is that it's going to get voted down. The problem is that process is going to be very damaging to our community. It's this cityhood effort that is convincing the Druid Hills area to annex into Atlanta, which throws our school system into total chaos. It is this referendum process that is causing a lot of divisiveness in our neighborhood. So we're going to go through all this process, we're going to draw some maps, people are going to vote it down, and what we have at the end of the day is a seriously damaged and impaired community that has lost its schools, that has turned neighbor against neighbor, and I don't think that that's a very good policy, and that's not a very effective solution. The problem that everybody agrees is governance in DeKalb. The cities don't address governance issues in DeKalb. We've been making new cities for 10 years, and it has not helped. It's actually made things worse, in my opinion. There are real things that the Governmental Affairs Committee can do as far as amending the DeKalb Organizational Act that will help address the thing that everybody agrees is actually the main problem. So instead of distracting from those real solutions with this that doesn't actually get us anywhere, let's focus on addressing our real problem.
You might have said at the beginning, where do you live, if you don't mind me asking?
I live off of Fraser Road.
Okay, so you're not in the contested area outside?
I am not in the contested area.
You're not in the...
I'm in the La Vista Hills area. I'm not in the contested area.
So
I'm inside the perimeter.
You're not, and it would be, you wouldn't in the area that be annexed into Atlanta?
I wouldn't be. The only possible city I'm in, it would be the city of La Vista Hills. I'm not in the annexation area.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your time. Next up, Miss Joy.
Thank you. I'm here speaking as unincorporated DeKalb citizen. I live in Sagamore Hills and I own a house in the Laurel Ridge community. My great-grandfather lived in unincorporated DeKalb, and he gave his property to build Medlock School in Medlock Park. My 90-year-old father still lives in unincorporated DeKalb in the house he built in 1953. My husband and I, for 42 years, have chosen to live in unincorporated DeKalb. For those who are not aware, for 192 years since its beginning in 1822, DeKalb County has remained unincorporated. In 1853, Fulton County was created out of DeKalb to serve the county to serve as the county for City of Atlanta. Thus began a trend towards the desirability of living outside municipalities. Unincorporated DeKalb offered that option to growing families and neighborhoods. We have long served as the homes and communities to hundreds of thousands of families. At 4 different times, my husband and I could have chosen to live in the cities of Atlanta or Decatur, but we did not. We consciously chose to live in unincorporated DeKalb. If La Vista Hills is formed and the annexation maps remain as they are, Central DeKalb will cease to exist and will take South DeKalb with it. There are not enough pieces of this pie for all those who want our desirable communities in commercial areas. I urge you to put all the maps aside. There is no way those maps can create enough of DeKalb for everyone to have a sustainable portion of that pie. If what is proposed on these maps actually went forward, the only ones who would get fat from that pie are the annexing outsiders, leaving La Vista Hills and the rest of Central and South DeKalb to starve to death. Even if the new city could prove viability, adding another layer of government will not help. No matter how big or small government is, either accountability is transparent and either government is either accountable and transparent or it is not, no matter how big or small it is. We do not have a failure of our basic services in DeKalb. What has failed us has been the lack of accountability in central government. But that can be changed by you. When our school system was in trouble, we citizens stepped forward and asked the state of Georgia's help. You boldly responded and helped purge the corruption. It is now back on a good path to sustainability and focused on the job of providing education to our children. On behalf of hundreds of thousands of unheard and still silent voices in our county, I'm asking for your help. You have the authority and the power to correct the problems in the DeKalb government. You have the authority to deny the new cities of La Vista Hills and Tucker. You can stop the annexations. You can keep the areas around Emory and the commercial properties where they want to be, in unincorporated DeKalb. You are the ones who determine what ultimate decisions can be made by the voters. You can control what goes on our ballots. Please help us keep Central DeKalb together. Please help us keep South DeKalb sustainable with a contiguous, unincorporated area. Please help us keep this unique blend of cultures and communities operating under one solid umbrella of one ethical government. It is a wise and reasonable choice. I'm sorry, my mouth is getting dry. As an unincorporated county, we have successfully survived 192 years. That has to mean something. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your comments. All right. The La Vista Hills folks have given me a list of 10 folks who they would ask to speak on their behalf. I have 19 folks signed up to speak in favor of Tucker. Are there any volunteers to, will 9 of you volunteer to allow?
We'll send some down. That's all right.
Okay.
We'll gather and have a few come forward.
Okay.
And also, Representative, some folks have already left, so
Okay.
on my list. So we'll be short.
All right. Let's let me do this. I'll start on the La Vista Hills map list here. I'll give you 3 names, and if the 3 of you could line up, and then we'll have 3 folks from speaking on behalf in favor of Tucker come and address us next. Bill Kushner, Kathy Nelson, and Scott Lord. And just a reminder, please, right to the point. Thank you, sir.
My name is Bill Kushner, and I own a townhome on Salin Crossing just outside of 285 in what some might call the contested area, where La Vista and Tucker proposals overlap. I've been to many meetings in my neighborhood and those close by where owners have repeatedly talked about concerns relating to crime and the lack of a quick and timely response in our area by the county. Our adjoining neighborhood, 1 block away, was on all the local news channels for just such a problem. Crime rates continue to rise, and my neighbors want and deserve more protection. Tucker has no such provisions in the proposal for a city police force. Also, on a number of occasions, mention has been made by residents of all the poorly maintained roads in our area, with my street being one of them. The county confirmed to me as chairperson of our association maintenance committee that scheduled repaving for our old patched and repatched street is 10 years in the future at best. From what I have read, the city of Dunwoody can pave twice as much for the same dollars DeKalb County. La Vista Hills, I am sure, will be able to do the same. La Vista Hills has included public works in their proposal, but Tucker has not. I have personally canvassed our neighborhood association of 30 residences as well as other nearby neighborhoods outside of 285 with a petition for Lakeside City. After discussions as to the great differences in philosophy between the 2 neighborhood movements, I was able to sign up most of the residents with whom I spoke because they were able to see stark contrast between these 2 proposals, especially in terms of services offered and of local control. And as I'm sure you know, the current La Vista Hills proposal in terms of city services is basically identical to the proposals of Lakeside. For me, as a resident in the contested areas, this is a tale of 2 cities. One being formed to tackle some of the big problems of county government, such as public safety and public works, with new locally controlled solutions, and another potential city with its leaders trying to protect what they see as the status quo and its past. Tucker is not offering new solutions to major problems. I respectfully request that this panel please keep in mind that if you move Tucker's borders to be more inclusive of the contested areas, you will at the same time deny more and more residences and businesses of locally controlled vital services provided by La Vista Hills but not Tucker. And in my canvas neighborhoods, local control of essential services is what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Kathy Nelson?
Hello. My name is Kathy Nelson. I live in the Evansdale neighborhood that Representative Holcomb mentioned. And I greatly appreciate what he said about our neighborhood. It's true. We are in the contested area. In fact, I've lived in the contested area for 40 years of my life. There are two reasons that we want to be part of La Vista Hills: community and public safety. We purchased our house 11 years ago specifically for the Lakeside community: Evansdale Elementary, Henderson Middle School, and Lakeside High School. Our friends live in this area. We shop in the area of La Vista Hills footprint. We socialize, we volunteer, and we attend church in the La Vista Hills footprint. We believe that the La Vista Hills Committee understands the desires of our neighborhood, and we want to be part of that map. Also, public safety. I attended a public safety forum on October 14th at Holy Cross Catholic Church, and I learned from Dunwoody and Brookhaven police representatives about the success of their city police forces. It was very exciting to me to know that public safety is part of the La Vista Hills proposal, and I want to live in a city with its own police force. I believe a police force that has a smaller area to police will provide us with better protection. So thank you for listening. We appreciate you taking our opinions into consideration.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. Mr. Lord.
Representatives, thank you for your time this afternoon. I'm Scott Lord. My wife Caroline and I are 13-year residents of DeKalb County. We live near the Livesey Grammar School off of Chamblee Tucker Road. We are neither a road sign, nor a circle on a map, nor a pink area, nor are we a contested area. We're residents who live in a community that demands a choice over where it is that we live. Status quo is not okay. When there are obvious signs of problems in a community, in a county, being blissfully ignorant about them isn't okay. Change is what keeps organizations, businesses, and even relationships thriving. We talked a little bit about the county, and I wanted to give you some insights from some personal experience. Several years ago, I served as the grand jury foreman for DeKalb County. I had the opportunity to request the DeKalb County School Board to come in en masse and provide some feedback and ask questions of them. The dysfunction and the issues that were involved there were just too immense to even communicate. The most important part of my grand jury service, however, revolved around hearing hundreds of cases, felony cases, from the DeKalb County Police in the surrounding areas. They ranged everything from simple, lower rate felonies to horrendous crimes against children. There's such an expansive territory that the DeKalb County Police have to cover. These brave men and women can't do the job by themselves. So simply ignoring public safety is not okay. And myself, my neighborhood, and the citizens deserve the opportunity to vote there. We believe that a well-organized leadership group such as La Vista Hills will serve the community appropriately. There's no firm lines in unincorporated DeKalb County, and we deserve the chance to voice our opinion and vote on that. So I strenuously urge you to retain the boundaries that are in the La Vista Hills map and let our voices be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, if the Tucker folks would give me three people, and if you just step up to the microphone and state your name, please. Thank you, sir.
To the honorable members of the House Governmental Subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to express my views on the subject of cityhood, which impacts my home and also the ambitions of my community. My name is Mario Chandler, and I'm a professor at Oglethorpe University. I'm also new as a homeowner in the Tucker area. closing on my home just 5 short months ago. I chose to purchase in Tucker for very deliberative reasons. The small town feel of Tucker, with an identifiable geographic and social identity, was an essential appeal for me. My healthcare providers, years prior to my move to Tucker, are located in the area. My doctor, Tucker, outside of the perimeter, and my dentist, Tucker, inside of the perimeter, but still Tucker the same. The suggestion that 285 be used as the most convenient solution to settle this dispute is too simplistic of a solution to be entertained. And I said as much in the November 24th email sent to this subcommittee and also copied to Representative Carter. My neighbors and I strongly support the Tucker cityhood effort. We also support the same effort for our to-be neighbor, La Vista Hills. That said, it seems to me that the La Vista Hills and Tucker movements have slightly different visions of how they want their city to look, to feel, and to operate. I support the Tucker leadership's prudent and also fiscally responsible approach to services. It's difficult to know which services are precise and important and desirable before we lay the pathway for the process. To be sure, some current Tucker residents prefer the La Vista Hills model, and I respect those views. But that position is not the majority opinion, and even if it were, that opinion alone should not justify so easily the overturning and transforming of a territory with an established, though de facto, delineation. Tucker has geography, history, and identity, and that should not be miscalculated or undermined. To radically change its boundaries is a threat to that identity, and the need to codify Tucker in the cityhood movement did not come about as an arbitrary or fleeting act, but rather as a natural reaction of self-preservation in the light of the movements taking place around it. The success and fiscal health of both cities should be the top priority of this subcommittee in the course of its deliberations. Successful growth of the two cities will depend, among other things, on the commercial properties in our respective areas. It is totally unfair to Tucker's fiscal health that La Vista Hills be granted North Lake Mall when another mall, North DeKalb, is already within their boundaries. The solution will be difficult and hardly clean, but it should and it must take into account the history and identity of the area as well as the fiscal stability of the two cities. Thank you for the important work that you're undertaking.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'll be short. It's getting warm in here. My name is Todd Beck. My wife, Elizabeth, and I have lived in Tucker for 27 years. We are proponents for the city of Tucker. Our current home is in a contested area on Livesey Drive. We are only 1.2 miles from Main Street, Tucker, and over 6.5 miles from the confessed epicenter of La Vista Hills, which is the Oak Grove area. We often include downtown Tucker in our frequent walks. As with most young families, when we moved, our decision to move was driven by the school district, the property values, and the reputation of the community. We've heard from the La Vista Hills proponents that we will be left out if we don't sign a petition to join their cityhood, left out of having more police, better roads and sidewalks, local control of parks, and responsible use of tax dollars. My wife and I actually share these values, as I know many and most of the Tucker proponents do as well, and that's why we are proponents of a Tucker cityhood, which we believe would yield the same benefits as those evangelized by our friends in the La Vista Hills movement, but at a smarter fashion. However, the main difference between our two movements is that the proposed lines of the Tucker cityhood neither destructs nor dismantles the identity of any of the communities within our borders. I am asking that you take a hard look at the long reach that La Vista Hills is requesting and ask yourself why. Why dismantle a community with such a historic reputation? For better schools? Schools isn't an issue here, so that's not it. For better property value than the city of Tucker could offer? That's not it. Is it a more cohesive community than Tucker already has? That's not it either. So my wife and I are hoping that you will make the right decision and remove the contested area from the La Vista Hills map. We appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Ann Lewis. I am a 23-year resident of Tucker, and I'm a person who spends a lot of time looking at maps, and I want to get right to the question that, well, before I get to the question of why is the Tucker map better, I do want to say thank you to you for helping us. I think Representative Hamilton's point was a good one. If we could have worked this out alone, we would have done that. I'm sorry that we couldn't. I do want to say that I attended a very brief session of the mediation, and I thank those members of the La Vista Hill, of Lakeside, Briarcliff, and Tucker who came together and tried to work it out and spent many more hours than I did in trying to mediate that. But as you all know, mediation requires all the parties to agree to a result. And while Briarcliff and Lakeside came together to form a city or a proposed city, the question always was, and the dispute always was from last year and continuing into this year, what is the border between Tucker and Lakeside, now La Vista Hills? That was the dispute when the mediation began. That was unfortunately the dispute when the mediation ended. It isn't as if two could agree and one just wouldn't get along. Everybody couldn't agree on the one issue. Where is that border? Is it 285? What happens in North Tucker and those residents, and what happens with the North Lake Commercial District? We're left in the same place, which is a competing map on those two issues. So you ask, why is the Tucker map better? And I will say, first of all, because the Tucker map recognizes something that is important in map drawing. Do you have a recognizable border? Is that because of geography or a roadway or a historic community? And Tucker can answer yes to those questions. And so I think, first of all, it's a better map because it follows objective criteria in drawing a map. People will know where Tucker is because they already know where Tucker is. That's one of the reasons there's a historic community. To Representative Oliver's point, what is feasible? Why is this a better map in terms of feasibility? The Tucker map has the same basic lines that it had when the feasibility study was done. That doesn't have to be done over again. It also doesn't have to consider the various annexations that are taking place around the La Vista Hills community. There isn't that annexation threat to the Tucker map. Finally, I will say that one point I think Representative or Chairman Brockway made is that we're not talking about what services are the best. We're talking about what lines are the best. And the services are for the people to determine. What we want is a smaller community. And I will say by smaller, we don't mean the same size as our county commission district, which is roughly the size of the new city of La Vista Hills. We want a smaller community. I think Mr. Allman talked about 50 and 50. That gives us smaller and more local control. While some people in the contested area may want police services, there are other people in that area who have told the city of Tucker proponents that we don't want to overpromise, we don't want to overspend, we want to know we can make this city work from the beginning. And that doesn't mean to say, and police force, I think we can all agree, the police force is going to be the most expensive part of any city, the highest liability, the biggest cost. And so we're not ready to do that yet. But it isn't because we don't care about crime. Crime is down in our area. We do have 2 substations. And finally, zoning is critically important to the Tucker area. If you've been to Tucker, you know that zoning could be vastly improved, and that's an area that we need improvement in. So at the end of the day, you ask, why is it a better map? It's a better map because you can tell where the community is, and right now you can know it's feasible because we have a feasibility study that shows that. We don't have to consider other annexed portions because that's not part of the Tucker plan. And I thank you very much for your attention.
You do have one question.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
And
Representative Fleming.
And
Yes.
thank you for coming today, and you know I very much respect your opinion.
Thank you.
Where do you live in the map?
I live in Tucker, and I live in Tucker. I know that sort of tells it to you. I live in an area in a neighborhood called West Hampton. So, if you go to the very end of the DeKalb line, my neighbors live in Gwinnett, so I live on the line.
You live on the far right-hand side of the map, kind of. No?
I live, if you're looking straight at it, I live on the far right-hand side of the map.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long have you lived there?
23 years.
23 years.
Yes.
I asked this question earlier of the gentleman in favor of Tucker.
Yes.
I asked him, does Buckhead still exist because it's within the city of Atlanta? There was a lot of time spent in that presentation telling us how historic Tucker was, how long it had been there. Why is Tucker going to go away if it happens to parts of it happen to exist within the city of La Vista?
Well, I think, you know, Buckhead exists within the city of Atlanta. Buckhead is an area, you know, for most people it's a night spot. But Tucker isn't that. Tucker isn't a part of the city of Atlanta. It's not going to go away, but it won't be Tucker anymore if it's in the city of La Vista Hills. Nobody will recognize it as Tucker anymore. And I guess the bigger issue to me is we're not here today talking about, you know, a particular area of the city of Atlanta that's known for shopping or nightlife or whatever. We're talking about two cities and what is going to be in each city. And our position on Tucker is that Tucker is a recognizable community that is now faced with the issue of cityhood. And so when you say, why will Tucker go away? Well, once there are cities of La Vista Hills and Tucker, I think one will be identified as one and one as the other.
Let me ask you a question that's probably been asked a long time ago, but I'll see if there's anything different to be said about it. What if this whole area became a city?
Well, I'd say, for one, you mean La Vista Hills and Tucker all together? I, for one, would say I absolutely object to that. What is the point of a city of 100,000 people? No, I mean, that doesn't give you smaller government at all. And if what we're looking for in DeKalb, and we're looking for that, at least in Tucker, we're looking for that, is a smaller government. Not to, I mean, I assume that a city of 100,000 people would probably rank up there with the top 5, 6, 7 cities in Georgia.
If we draw the city of Tucker like you're asking,
yes.
What do we do with the La Vista Hills area?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know what's going to happen with the annexations. I don't know, but I don't think La Vista Hills cannot exist if the city of Tucker is drawn as we propose. That isn't the case. It's not feasible because the city of Tucker is drawn as we propose.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You have another question?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Representative Alder.
Representative Fleming's last question is kind of brings me back. I'm assuming, and I don't have any facts, that both cities are feasible if it's 50,000 people on each city, if we adopted your map. But that somebody's got to prove that to me.
Yes, Representative. I can say from Tucker's perspective that Tucker did the feasibility study and is feasible. I don't know from the other perspective.
I don't know whether. I think it is feasible, but that's something somebody's got to prove to me to justify your map. If I were going to be fair and try to, you know, cut the baby in half. If that was my mood.
Right.
So
we know you're fair.
I'm fair. But so the question is, we come back. I circle back to my earlier comments. What's the financial data?
Yes, definitely, and we will work to get you all what you've all asked for today. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you taking on this task for me and my neighbors. Because at the end of the day, we want to remain friendly neighbors, and that's possible. We just have to make it work. Thank you.
Thank you. On our sign-up sheet here, I have two people who, in parentheses next to their name, wrote Medlock, Cindy Johnson and Steve Bishop. Are either of them here that can explain what that means? And okay. So Medlock is a subdivision? Okay. Vaguely. Okay. And presently you're not in anybody's map. Is that what? Well, lucky you. Okay. All right. I tell you what, that really isn't in the purview of our subcommittee. So I'm happy to talk with you offline about that. We have two other people who signed up and said that they are in the La Vista Hills map, but are also in the area that the city of Atlanta is may or may not be desiring. Again, in the interest of time, I'm happy to speak with the two of you. That's Catherine Barfield and Don Strother. What I'll do, if it's okay with you, well, I hate to say, I'm just going to do it. I mean, no offense, that really isn't part of what happens in that area when in their relation with the city of Atlanta is really outside of the purview of what we're doing, what our committee is asked to do. If the two of you are here and want to come talk to me about that, I will, because I have talked with with some of the folks over there in the Together in Atlanta organization, and I can maybe provide some information to you. All right, we have two other people in the not uncommitted list here, who, and I'll ask them to come forward now. Mr. Jim Duffy and Mike Eastery. Okay, if the two of you are here and would like to come forward and speak, please come on, sir. Thank you. Okay. Are they? If I could ask you, sir, are you dealing with annexation issues?
It is.
Is it in? Well, let me just go ahead.
It's not La Vista Hills or Tucker.
Okay. Well, how about this? Why don't you and if Mr. Duff, I saw him here earlier. If Mr. Duffy's around, why don't the two of you come and talk to me afterward?
That sounds
and
good.
I'll do what I can to help you out. All right. I'm going to go back now to the La Vista Hills list here and give me three more people lined up. Janine Bello, Sylvia Murphy, and John Zoller. If you three folks could line up, we'll hear from you three, and then we'll hear from three from Tucker. So if the Tucker folks could get three more people queued up for me, I'd appreciate it. Yes, ma'am, and your name, please?
Hi, I'm Janine Bello.
Thank you.
I'm one of the 23,000 in the contested area. I'm a 27-year resident of an area between Henderson Roads and Midvale Roads, which is off of La Vista or Henderson Mill Road. There have been so many comments, my head is just swimming with things that have been said that are so wrong. To call La Vista Hills a divisive entity is so wrong, because Tucker has been the one that has really flown in the face of so many of our neighbors and spread.
Yeah, ma'am. With all due respect, if
I know.
If you could just, I mean, I hope you understand.
I do understand.
If we, you know, I think we've had a pretty fair hearing where folks are getting the opportunity to make their case. If you could just restrict your remarks to why you want to be in the La Vista Hills map, I would appreciate it.
I want to be in the La Vista Hills map because, in contrast to Tucker, which does tout its history and a lot of country sort of farm connections, I don't feel that way. That really is not what my neighbors and I feel at all. I joke that my car only turns right out of our subdivision. It heads to North Lake and beyond to the south. It does not really go to Tucker very frequently. All my doctors are in town, my church is in town, so I really am not all that familiar with Tucker. It's a fine place if you want to be there. Tucker doesn't make sense to me. And I really resent being strong-armed by people to become a part of it. They've really tried to put people on the outside very much, dividing the community, and I don't like that at all.
All right.
Our neighborhood is a very thin strip right along the border of 285. You could almost throw a stone and hit 285. It's also the conjunction of zip codes. There's an Atlanta zip code, a Doraville zip code, Chamblee zip code, and a Tucker zip code, and they all come together almost at the same place. It's very confusing. And I know they made a point of the zip code not distinguishing anything, and I would really agree with that. Just because I'm in this zip code called 30084 does not mean I'm a part of that community. I don't feel that way at all. Nor do most of my neighbors. Most of my neighbors have come to me and said, I really hope that we can become a part of Lakeside, now La Vista Hills. They are not Tucker advocates. And most of them have the same type of reasoning that I do. They don't identify with the Tucker community. You see here there are lots of people who do, but I don't know why do they want neighborhoods that don't want to be a part of them. I was very much a civic activist kind of person. I was on the Tucker Civic Association for 2 terms. I represented the area where I live and beyond, when we held community work days, I could hardly get anybody in this area to become active in any community things with Tucker. They really wasn't that they disliked them, they just weren't interested. So the only thing they would be interested in would be school cleanup days at Midvale School down Midvale Road, which is where we are near.
Great.
So,
thank you,
okay,
ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate
and I
your
did want to
comments.
tell you all, thank you very much for doing this and hearing us. I appreciate your position that you are definitely, most of you don't live in DeKalb and you don't understand the kind of history and the sort of political reasons that passions run very high. I will tell you that it's been very divisive, and you can see it here.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Mr. Zoller?
Chairman Brockway, my name is Don Broussard. I am distributing a map to the committee, and I'm only going to take about 30 seconds of the committee's time, and I appreciate it.
All right. Are you, so I can be fair to both sides, are you with La Vista Hill, or are you for La Vista Hills or for Tucker?
La Vista
or
Hills.
Okay.
I'm a board member of the Briarcliff Group, and I've endorsed the Lakeside Yes map, the La Vista Hills map, and the map you have in front of you is a land use map submitted to the House Government Affairs Committee in February, and it's an excellent map produced by Tucker 2014, and it shows the land use pattern in Tucker in general, and in particular in the North Lake area. And I want to call your attention to this. It passes the eyeball test. Interstate 285 shows how it is pretty much a compromise, dividing a roughly equal amount of commercial land inside 285 and outside 285. And I want to urge you all to consider this map. I realize you all may want to dive more into the financials of it, but as I said, this helps you with the eyeball test of how land use, and the question that Representative Oliver, my state representative, posed earlier. How do we divide this up? I was a former member of the DeKalb Planning Commission, and I had a little bit to do with the original Briarcliff map. As far as the other pieces of La Vista Hills that extend outside of 285, I would urge the committee to consider Representative Holcomb's assessment of that situation. I think he did a fair assessment of the dynamics there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your patience and for taking time to let me speak to you today. My name is Sylvia Murphy, and I also live in the Evansdale Elementary area outside the perimeter. And I guess I'd like to reiterate a couple points that were made earlier. I think it's important to clarify that our Evansdale area has, that I do not have a Tucker mailing address or a Tucker zip code. Our zip code is 30340, and we are actually technically Doraville. The Evansdale area has been part of the Lakeside neighborhood for decades, and we were a driving force behind the proposed city of Lakeside, which is now La Vista Hills. The Evansdale Elementary is part of the current Lakeside High School community, and it is no accident that the original proposed boundaries for the city of Lakeside closely mirror the Lakeside feeder pattern. We are already part of the Lakeside community, and we deserve our community to remain intact. Something that I also feel very strongly about is the services that the La Vista Hills are offering. My main concern is that the city of La Vista Hills would have its own local police force, which is a critically important issue for our area and my family. The one time my family actually called 911 when we had an attempted break-in and our children were in the house, it took nearly 2 hours for someone to respond. This is unacceptable, and the police officer, although very polite and wonderful, he directly told us that our area was not a priority for police coverage. So I think we believed better protection, and that this will, this new cityhood will help us get increased police presence. So thank you very much, and I hope that you will consider Evansdale neighborhoods' right to determine our own local government and do not divide us from the rest of our Lakeside and La Vista Hills community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, if Tucker could send us 3 folks, please. Craig, could you?
Do you mind if I put this down here? Thank you.
Never mind, Craig. If there, I don't know if there's a flash drive or something in there. If you could.
Actually, I'm going to use that in a minute.
Okay.
When I speak.
All right, sir. Never mind, Craig. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hi. I'm Thomas Walker, and I've been a practicing attorney for 22 years in Atlanta and a Tucker resident for 17 years. To paraphrase steal the words of Matthew McConaughey, I moved to Tucker because I just liked it. One of the things I've got involved with when I was with Tucker was the Tucker Civic Association, and from 2005 to 2006 I was part of a study committee charged with meeting every week for 1 year to look at ways to improve the Tucker community. We studied zoning and planning, we studied overlay districts, we studied CIDs, TADs, LCIs, we looked at SPLOST and HOST, we considered eminent domain and its implications on our community. We also looked at incorporation. And we also looked at grants that are available for groups that are cities and that aren't available for other groups. So I'm very familiar with the community, and the feedback we had, after we had met for a year, we had a open meeting to the public at St. Mark's Lutheran Church on Brockett Road, and we also presented a paper. And the thing that we got from the community was that people liked the community, they just had different views about how it should be done. But everyone liked the general feel of the community, liked the way it was. And what I like about the Tucker proposal, the Tucker 215 proposal, is it is faithful to that sentiment of the community, that it keeps the community the same. It keeps the things that we liked best about our community. Now, one of the representatives asked Frank Allman a question about zoning and planning, and it sounded kind of skeptical, thinking that, well, we don't really care about zoning and planning. This is just an effort to thwart La Vista Hills. Nothing could be further from the truth. One of the things that we found in our study committee, that zoning and planning was extremely important in the Tucker area. We had numerous fights over zoning and planning with the DeKalb County Commission. We had one commissioner representing us, another 6 who don't live in the area who are making decisions about what would happen. Every time there was a fight, we lost. The community of Tucker lost our zoning battle and had things decided by people who didn't live in our community. One of the areas was on Idlewood Road. There's that is a single-family homes with yards, very nice, well-built homes from the 50s and 60s. A large swath of that was raised and made into townhomes that didn't fit the character or the community and really should never have been put there in the first place. There was a huge fight over the Hebron Hills Swim and Tennis Club off of Lawrenceville Highway behind the Big Green Egg Store. Again, the community came out in force to fight against this. DeKalb County said, we don't care, and they rezoned it to be put to have townhomes there. Now, fortunately, that one, the developer went bankrupt and it couldn't move forward. There was a community fight on zoning and planning about a piece of undeveloped, very pristine property across from the Kofor shopping center. Walgreens wanted to build a little strip mall there. The community was kind of divided, but there's a lot of opposition against. I can't tell you if it was 50-50, 60-40, or how it was, but there was a lot of opposition. Again, that went against community input. The strip mall was put up there. When you want to look at zoning and planning, there was another issue, the Siemens plant behind North Lake Festival. A group wanted to come in there and put a bunch of apartment homes in there, and there was almost no community input at all. I went to one meeting where that was very poorly publicized. There were probably about 10 of us. We all pretty much opposed the idea of putting apartments there. And the only way I found that was rezoned and apartments were going in there was when I was by there and saw the construction starting. So to dismiss city zoning and planning for our area is not really important. It's kind of a subterfuge to try and thwart La Vista Hills. That's just wrong. We care about that, and that's why I am on board with the Tucker plan. A question about policing was also issued to Frank Allman. Said, well, what about policing? Well, I can honestly tell you I like the Tucker plan because maybe I'm in the minority, but I like the DeKalb County Police protection of our area. Now, we don't just have 2 police precincts in Tucker. We have the Tucker Public Safety Building, which is the headquarters for the Tucker Police and the DeKalb County Police and the fire department. I can't go anywhere in my community of Tucker without seeing police cruisers out on patrol. I have seen them come through my very quiet neighborhood community. When I first moved to Tucker in 1997, we had a rash of break-ins, and I was fortunate that I could shift my schedule and work from home a lot of days, and I kept like an eye out for suspicious activity in my neighborhood. And I kept seeing this one car. I was kind of driving around very slowly looking it through, and I quickly called the DeKalb County Police, and that car landed at my yard, and I went out my back, jumped on my neighbors, called the police from there, said, hey, there's a guy, and they said, oh, we've gotten the call. That's actually an undercover police car going through your community trying to find the people who have been doing these break-ins. And the break-ins ended shortly after that. So maybe other people outside of Tucker have had bad experience with police, but I can tell you that the DeKalb County Police have done a good job within our community of Tucker. In closing, I would just like to say that with the previous incorporations of Sandy Springs and Dunwoody and Brookhaven, you had long-standing communities that asked to be made into a city, and that's what you have with Tucker. You have a long-standing community of Tucker. We wish to be made into a city as opposed to a city committee wishing to be made into a community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman Brockway and committee, we really appreciate your time. I'm speaking on behalf of Tucker. My name is Neil Stubblefield, and for over 24 years, my family has lived in the North Lake Woods subdivision, which is 1 mile east of I-285 in the contested area along Midvale Road. For over 24 years, our mailing address has been Tucker, Georgia, and we have voted at the Tucker branch of the DeKalb County Library as well as Midvale Elementary School. And we've always considered ourselves part of the Tucker community. We are dismayed that the former proposed city of Lakeside and now La Vista Hills have included our neighborhood in their proposed city boundary. When we moved here in 1990 from Avondale Estates, we did so because we wanted to be part of Tucker, a community that has had a distinct identity for over 122 years, and the place where my wife grew up during the 1960s, the place where she attended Stevens Kindergarten and still remembers her kindergarten graduation held in the auditorium at Tucker High School, where her family bought shoes at Smith's and did their back-to-school shopping at the Kofor Brothers department store on Main Street, where the Tucker Animal Clinic cared for their pets, and where they worshiped at Tucker United Methodist Church. Both of our children grew up in Tucker, attending Midvale Elementary, a 5-minute walk from our home, and summer camp at Tucker Recreation Center. Now that they're grown, when they come home to visit, they come home to Tucker. Tucker is and will always be their hometown. In the only attempt to gauge our support for the city other than Tucker, the former Lakeside group circulated a petition that was presented to us in late summer of 2013. We did not sign it. The petition carrier stated that if we joined the City of Lakeside, school children in our area would become part of the Lakeside School District, which would have a positive effect on our property values. When we pointed out that the school system was completely independent of any cityhood proposal and would have no effect a matter on school district boundaries, the petition carrier disagreed and said that they were sure it would just be a matter of time until we were redistricted to Lakeside if we became part of the City of Lakeside, and that every neighbor that they had met with had agreed with them and had signed their petition. We have no doubt that confusion over the relationship between cityhood and the county school system and the general perception that Lakeside is a superior school to Tucker High School has contributed greatly to the belief among some of our neighbors that joining Lakeside or Briarcliff or now La Vista Hills is somehow a superior alternative to Tucker. Tucker is not the vision of someone who woke up a couple of years ago and decided to form a city out of a previously unidentified area and then set about to choose a name for it and decide who should be included and excluded. It is a real community with a real identity, known as Tucker since 1892, when the railroad established a train depot on its main street. Long before anyone started talking about incorporation, books had been written about its history. As already been alluded, many people assume that it was incorporated a long time ago. We have no objection to a city of La Vista Hills being formed, but we want to remain in Tucker, where our neighborhood belongs, and we want to see the Tucker community left intact. We ask that you block the proposed City of La Vista Hills efforts to include residential areas outside of I-285 and allow all of those neighborhoods to choose to remain in the proposed city of Tucker. We appreciate your consideration as your committee draws these boundaries for these new communities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for hearing us today. I'm here before you today as Ann Lerner, an 18-year homeowner in Winding Woods, where we now find ourselves in the contested area. And I'm an active community volunteer who has dedicated those 18 years to the place I call home, and where I bought my home purposely in Tucker. I've also served with Janine Bello, one of the ladies who was up here beforehand for La Vista Hills on the Tucker Civic Association. And as she spoke for her neighbors and said most of her neighborhood was for La Vista Hills, I'm actually sitting with 4 of her neighbors right there wearing Tucker stickers. So, of course, please understand, not every neighborhood is one or the other.
Restrict our remarks.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm here as the Neighborhood Watch Chairman of Winding Woods. I've served in that position for close to 15 years. I, too, am concerned about public safety, and that's why I support Tucker. Crime is not going to magically go away because you form your own police department. You know, the other day, the Winding Woods neighborhood woke up, and we realized we're now on the map of La Vista Hills. And despite the talk of neighborhood outreach, that has not happened in my neighborhood. Not only are we included in this new map, but our neighborhood has been divided down a street called Crestcliff Drive. So if those of you who are familiar with the area, you go down La Vista Road, you're crossing 285, you're heading down towards Tucker High School, we're the first neighborhood on the left. Crestcliff Drive runs from La Vista Road to Midvale Road. We now see, if you're coming from La Vista, the people who live on the left side of Crestcliff Drive are now included in the contested area of the map of the La Vista Hills. The people who live on the right-hand side of Crestcliff Drive remain as they always have been, and where the rest of us were in the Tucker map. That shows an extreme lack of knowledge about my area and a lack of concern about public safety. As the Neighborhood Watch Chair, this is going to be a nightmare situation for me. We have an excellent relationship with our DeKalb County Police, and we have a precinct that is less than a half a mile away. Where will the La Vista Hills precinct be? Will it be closer to where I've heard some of them quote it in the paper, their city center is closer to 85 and Briarcliff? Will it be near Toco Hills? With our neighborhood split, can you imagine the confusion with 911? I also question why would we want to be an outlier in a large 72,000 person city that voids our need for small local control. That's what this should be about. Our voice already seems to be lost with La Vista Hills. So I'm glad to say that we are also included totally in the Tucker map, and I hope you leave it this way. What is the benefit of dividing my tight-knit, as somebody said before, Mayberry-style community and removing us from the police force that we have built a solid relationship with and are located just a few blocks away? What is the benefit of removing us from the Tucker community where we have spent years volunteering and working side by side with others? To me, that just does not make sense, and no one asked our opinion.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we right now I've heard from 6 people from La Vista Hills and 6 people from Tucker. If you look around, you see the crowd is kind of thinned out some. I have members of my committee who have other commitments they have to make. I have 2 state representatives from DeKalb County who have asked to speak, so right now I'm going to ask them to come and speak, and then I will take one more person from each side, unless there are people who really have an absolute burning need to speak, I'll take one more person from each side. So right now I'd ask Representative Tom Taylor if he would come and take the microphone, please, sir. And Pam, you're next. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Just want to switch gears a little bit with you here. I'm generally in favor of cityhoods. I'm not going to speak for or against either one here. I just wanted to put some food for thought out there. I'm the only elected representative down here who has been through the cityhood effort from concept through legislation, through implementing a city and actually ramping up service. So I just want to throw a couple things out to the committee for thought, as well as the folks in this room, just as you go down the process to keep in mind. this is hard. If you get a bill passed, that does not mean you get a city. You have to get a referendum passed. And to that, I would address the committee to look at the charters if this comes to an agreement and proceeds, have enough length of time between when the bill is passed and the charter is voted on in a referendum for people in the area to digest it. That, is a process that a lot of the community can't digest in a couple of months. If you passed a charter in March and had a referendum in May, I think that could be problematic. Again, service levels. You have a question? Okay. Just so that. Also, I don't know if either one of these cityhood bills has a sponsor yet, and I don't know if the committee would like to see a sponsor identified. Yeah. Okay. The CVI updates are critical, as Mr. Hamilton said, and Ms. Oliver and Mr. Mosby were on the committee as the Dunwoody thing was going through, and heard that for about 3 years. We had to update our figures. When people vote on this, they need to have the latest information available, pro or con, and with all the warts and everything. You can't sugarcoat it. The last thing I'll say is you have to. Next to the last thing I'll say is it's going to require the community to raise private money to do these CVI updates. When we did it, we had to go back and spend another $15,000, and it's up to these committees to go ahead and raise that. That money is probably not forthcoming from the state, I would guess. No. So the last thing is the matrix of services. And I'm particularly addressing this to Tucker. You may want to reconsider, and the reason is, in my experience, yes, you will receive services from DeKalb County if you become a city. They are not required to provide them under the same agreements now. You will have to negotiate every agreement. When Dunwoody became a city, we still received police services from DeKalb, but we paid over just about $500,000 a month in addition for those services. Okay. So don't assume that the agreements in place now, when you become a city, are going to be the same. They have to be negotiated, and that's something to think about. Just want to close with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the time, and to my colleagues who served on this committee. You have a daunting task. We've talked about cities in North DeKalb. We've talked about cities in Central DeKalb. And I'm here to tell you that South DeKalb has a lot of self-determination and a desire for local control. We also understand the criteria, and we also understand that everyone's at the same level now because we're in a new session. And we have the opportunity, and we will, and I'm giving you this notice, we will submit a plan, a map, and a bill for cities. Since we're looking at self-determination in DeKalb, it is our job to make sure. My constituents have spent a lot of time since March meeting and coming together with what we know will meet the criteria of services, essential development, a map that we hope will come from us without any contested areas, so that you'll be able to look at, hopefully, that we will bring forward to you. And I say hopefully because I know that we've heard all the criteria, all the boundaries, all the essential developments, but I did not want to leave here today without anyone thinking that the self-determination stops at some place called 285. I've been in DeKalb County for 28 years. So I've been in Doraville, I've lived in Avondale, I'm in unincorporated DeKalb. I see two sides of our county speaking, and I support not just self-determination, but the ability for control to come forward. I also support the voices of DeKalb making those decisions. If not, then we need to all get together. But we will have a bill. We will have a map, boundaries, and studies. And I do know that all the financial has to be updated, like my colleague said. We have sponsors. I didn't know that either, but we do have sponsors in South DeKalb. I will be one of those. I can articulate, I can plan. I know what we need to put into a bill, and we look forward to come back to this committee to answer the questions and be on the same level playing field as anyone else in DeKalb that's proposing a new city. So without any questions, if you have any, I'll answer those. But that is the 1 minute you said.
Thank you, Representative.
You're welcome.
All right. Yes. All right. We have a gentleman from Stone Mountain who'd like to speak, and then if both sides have one more person for me, we'll hear them.
Thank you very much. And sorry I didn't make it on the list earlier, but I represent the city of Stone Mountain. I serve on the Stone Mountain Annexation Task Force, and there's been a lot of discussion on new cities, and I thought it would be a little bit of an oversight if someone didn't raise their hand on behalf of the existing cities, as Representative Oliver mentioned earlier. I don't want to bore you with the history. I'm happy to discuss it with anyone, but we have put forth a formal annexation proposal. It's been approved by the City Council and endorsed. In the interim between the last session and now, we have also updated our code to attract or match the existing DeKalb code in the commercial areas. And we have also gone ahead and passed a Freeport exemption referendum for those areas as well to match up with DeKalb County. There is and it is a little bit of a rebuttal to the former presenter who said that there is no areas of contestation and annexation for Tucker. There is a very clear desire from Stone Mountain to annex, and even more importantly, it's an area of clear consent from both the residents of the area as well as the property owners.
All right, you do have a question, Representative Fleming.
I'm sorry, I may have missed it, sir. Are you with Stone Mountain?
I'm a resident, but I serve on a appointed annexation task force.
And what method of annexation are you going to use?
Referendum.
Okay, 50%.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We analyzed the 60% method and the 100% method and found both of those were probably unrealistic, although we could have pursued the 60% method, we think. But we felt like because there was residential involvement, that the appropriate way to go would be the 50% referendum.
And how far into the Tucker map that we saw does this go?
Our boundary now stops at Highway 78.
No, I'm looking at a map of your boundaries. I mean, how far does your annexation proposal go into what is the Tucker map that we were presenting?
It's everything south of 78 over to, I believe, Idlewood.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and it's wholly contained within the Stone Mountain CID.
When did Stone Mountain start talking about doing this?
Probably November of 13, about the same time the two cityhood discussions. Actually, our original map was much more expansive in nature. It actually included all of the Stone Mountain CID, which extended essentially all the way up Hugh Howell and Mountain Industrial to the Gwinnett County line. What we found in discussion since the last session was that the pretty clear consent of the Smokegrass neighborhood was that they preferred the Tucker option. And so we adjusted our boundaries accordingly and feel like what we presented is a very fair and reasonable annexation that achieves our goals while still allowing Tucker to move forward with their goals.
Thank you.
Representative Oliver.
Mr. Chairman, we weren't going to get into annexations, I thought, but I think it's fair for the committee members to know that all of the annexations surrounding La Vista Hills and Tucker and Stone Mountain is one of them, are having ongoing, in my view, cooperative conversations about an agreed upon options for those possible annexations going forward. But I'm sure we don't want to take time to hear about Chamblee, Brookhaven, Atlanta, Decatur, and Avondale's proposed annexations right now.
No, ma'am. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we have one more person from Tucker and one more person from La Vista Hills. State your name, please, ma'am.
Okay, my name's Terry Cole. I live in Tucker. I live in the contested area. I'm just outside of 285. And I'll keep it short. I just want to talk about the fact that Tucker is about services. And so I'm actually excited about negotiating intergovernmental agreements because it is a fiscally responsible way to do things. I mean, we'll be able to put new police on the street immediately, and we have $500,000 in reserves to pay for it. We don't have to ask people in our community to go into debt and issue bonds to do that. That's our feasibility study, and again, I've heard all the questions about that today, but I don't think our feasibility study is going to change. So I'm excited about services, and we have been to community meetings, and that's what we've heard. We've also heard Interestingly, and with apologies to Representative Oliver and Mosby, I will say this. There's a large area of Republicans in this community, which is where this fiscal conservatism comes from. I mean, that is what we've heard is we don't want big government. We don't want another layer right away. We want you to be fiscally responsible, start small, with room to grow. And they understand that that is absolutely the possibility that's before them. I will also say, for me personally, South DeKalb matters to me. Just because I happen to live in North DeKalb, I don't feel like I want to make sure that somehow all of my tax money doesn't go that way. I want to make sure they have a viable option. And to me, Tucker does the least harm, both to them and to others, because of our smaller startup. You know, the question was asked, will Tucker go away? And for me personally, it will, because I live in Tucker. And if you make this change, I will live in an area I did not purchase my home. What I would ask you is, the decision to purchase a home is one of the biggest and most financially strapping one people make in their lifetime. That was a very, very deliberate decision for me. I ask that you please set the bar extremely high to undo that decision that I made. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Lynn Long, and I'm in the disputed area. I'm just right outside the perimeter in Winding Woods subdivision. It's the first subdivision out over 285 on the left. So it's called Tucker. It's got a 30084 zip code, but the Tucker zip code is one of the largest in the city. It's 15.3 square miles. I'm on the far, west side of that. 500 feet from me is North Lake Parkway and a 30345 zip code, an Atlanta zip code. And I do not feel part of Tucker. I bought my home there because I wanted to live in the North Lake area. I grew up in the North Lake area. I've been living in the North Lake area for over 50 years. And Winding Woods is so far from Tucker, I would have to turn left on a 5-lane road to get there. It's 3 to 4 miles, and it takes about 15 minutes with traffic, where I can get in the North Lake Mall parking lot in 5 minutes if the light is green. And that's why North Lake Mall is my community of interest. And I think that's the most important factor, is not, I think the police is a very important factor too for another reason, but I think a community of interest should be the deciding factor, not 285. 285 is not a natural boundary. Driving over that expressway, usually the light is green anyway, and so it's not a hindrance. It's not. I disagree with Representative Holcomb, because what about the people that live within a mile diameter of the mall? You know, we always go there. Why are we all of a sudden supposed to be part of Tucker, where I never go? And I've lived in my current home for 20 years, and I just don't head left. I always go to North Lake Mall and to do my business. The police force is also very important to me, that La Vista Hills is providing that, because, as you know, if you live, all these cities that are just, all these neighborhoods that are barely outside the perimeter, and also the ones that are inside the perimeter, if you live along an expressway, you're the most vulnerable to robberies, because they'll hit the home and then they'll hop on the expressway to get away and get lost in the crowd. And even though the DeKalb Police Headquarters is close to us, that doesn't mean anything, because the officers head out on patrol, and they're not patrolling 100 feet from them. They're patrolling the huge county. And, you know, only time I see a DeKalb policeman is when they're on their way back to headquarters going down La Vista Road. I've never seen them in my neighborhood. And I feel like if I was in the La Vista Hills neighborhood with only 75,000 people, that I would have better protection. And with my house backing up to North Lake Parkway, I feel vulnerable, and I'm very happy they provide that service. And also, the Tucker Civic Association has had a negative effect on the growth of North Lake Mall. They're constantly, they have historically been denying and arguing with any new development. The hardest hit that North Lake had was about 10 years ago when they turned down Lowe's Home Improvement Store at the corner of North Lake Parkway and Lawrenceville Highway. That would have made an enormous impact with all the businesses it would have generated. And instead, what we have sitting there now is a QT. And, you know, they were talking, I don't know, it's just, let's see. So the three most important things to me are the community of interest, the high crime, the highways with the high crime area, the little road of high crime along it, and make sure I hit the top points. Oh yeah, I don't think Tucker would be a good steward of the North Lake Mall area, since they basically killed it 10 years ago, and I don't see them being positive. I'm a realtor, and I've had developers come up to me and say, we won't even try to build in the North Lake area anymore because the Tucker Civic Association makes it too difficult, and we don't even bother. So please let Lake La Vista Hills have it. And like they said, Tucker will not cease to exist if La Vista Hills became a city, and I don't know why people who live way out on the other side of Tucker near the Gwinnett County border care where I live. Like the lawyer from Tucker said, he said the DeKalb County commissioners, he only had one voice, and they didn't live in his community. Well, they don't live in my community. I don't live in Tucker. I just have the part of the huge zip code. They shouldn't be able to tell us along the perimeter who frequent North Lake Mall why we have to be part of Tucker. Oh.
Okay.
One other thing, I saw an email yesterday from the Tucker 2015 people, and they said, please show up today, this is real important. They said whether or not you want to be in a city or remain in unincorporated DeKalb. And I think the Tucker people are divided on whether they want to be a city or remain in unincorporated DeKalb. But I want to be in a city.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much, ma'am. All right, and at this time, I will meet with the members of the committee, and I will communicate. Yes, sir. Who are you?
My name is Greg Holcomb. I was the second person that signed up on the list at noon, and I would like the opportunity to speak, and these people have circumvented that, and I don't appreciate it very much. I really would like to speak to you.
Okay, I had you down on the pro La Vista Hills
Yes,
list, all right. 1 minute, please, sir.
Okay, 1 minute. Public safety is a top priority in North Crest. So is historic preservation. We're between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock at Spaghetti Junction. I appreciate the fact that these people feel that they get great police service from the city, from DeKalb County. We don't. Okay. We have armed home invasions. We have break-ins. People don't report them. People don't report petty theft because the police never show up. We need what works for them in Tucker, closer in, does not work for my neighborhood. And I appreciate that they have what they want, and we need what we want in this disputed area. And while there's some people that really want to be in Tucker, this part right here is neither historically been in Tucker or wants to be in Tucker, near Pleasantdale Elementary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right. I appreciate all of you being here today. I will meet with the members of the committee, and I will communicate through press release and through the various leadership of the groups on how we will proceed from here on out. And I appreciate all of your time today. This meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.